Good morning and welcome to Metro Board activities on May 11th. Before we get started, just for the benefit of folks in the room who may have colleagues, we are experiencing technical difficulties today with our live stream. So right now we are not broadcasting live. So we are recording the meeting. It will be available, all these meetings, later. And the team is still working to try to correct those difficulties. So it's possible it could come on sort of during the meeting this morning. So I just wanted to mention that. We will start with our safety contact with our Chief Safety and Readiness Officer, Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to Metro headquarters. In the event of an alarm activation, we'll exit this conference room via the glass doors and proceed into the lobby where we'll await further instructions from the security team. If we are instructed to exit the building, I'll lead the group to our designated assembly point at the adjacent Hancock Park, and the security team will coordinate first responders. There's an AED located at the entry desk, and in the event of an emergency, I'll retrieve the AED and render aid while the security team contacts first responders. Lastly, restrooms are located in the vestibule area adjacent to this conference room. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Metro has taken several actions to respond to mental health issues throughout the communities we serve. We've created an interdisciplinary task force to identify improvement opportunities regarding our response to mental health crises, increased training of our frontline employees, and hired crisis intervention specialists who work alongside the Metro Transit Police Department, serving to connect individuals who may be in crisis with appropriate support services throughout the region. Additionally, Metro has installed signage communicating the new suicide and crisis lifeline number 988 throughout the system. When people call, text, or chat 988, they will be connected to trained counselors who will listen, understand, provide support, and connect callers to resources. If you observe behavior in the system that leads you to believe that a customer is experiencing a mental health crisis, such as an individual going beyond the platform end gates, hanging over the edge of a train platform, or weaving into oncoming traffic, contact a station manager, MTPD, or other Metro personnel as soon as possible. For additional information on suicide prevention, contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by visiting 988lifeline.org. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you very much. I am Matt Letourneau, Chairman of the Finance and Capital Committee, and we're starting this morning with our Finance and Capital Committee. Since it is our first morning meeting of the morning, I will ask the Corporate Secretary to call the roll.
Mr. Letourneau?
Present.
Favors?
Present.
Ms. Klein? Present. Mr. Smedberg? Present. Dr. Lowe?
Present.
Ms. Martin Proctor?
Good morning.
Mr. Drummer?
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Next is the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. And now on to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of our April 14th meeting before us for approval. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we will consider the minutes approved as presented. We have one item on today's committee agenda, which is acceptance of the staff report on proposed changes to transit facilities at the Tacoma Metro Station and approval of those changes. I will note that Mr. McAndrew, Board Member McAndrew, has recused himself from participation in this item and will not be present at the dais for the presentation, discussion, or vote. I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Price and Mr. Segerlin to begin this morning's presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Stephen Segerlin, and I'm a director in the Office of Real Estate Development. I'm joined today by Liz Price, who's the Vice President for our office. The purpose of this presentation today is to seek board approval of the compact public hearing staff report for proposed changes at Tacoma Metro Station, which will enable joint development and increase ridership, improve bus operations, enhance pedestrian and bicycle safety, and support the District of Columbia's land use and economic development goals. This item is also requesting approval of amendments to the mass transit plan as required by the compact to execute these changes. For the background, this project has a long history. Staff have been coordinating with the District of Columbia and Maryland on this project and plans for the station area for more than 2 decades. And during this time, the project scope and development potential has evolved numerous times. After issuing the RFP for joint development in 1999, the board approved the joint development agreement with EYA in 2005. 2 compact public hearings have previously been held to consolidate and reduce parking capacity in support of prior site plans that initially included townhouses and later a roughly 240-unit apartment building. Those projects did not advance due to the 2007 financial crisis or because of discussions related to the District of Columbia's comprehensive plan update, which was adopted by District Council in 2021 that clarified and increased the development allowances for the site. This led the project team to rethink and revise the site plan to maximize density and ridership potential, and the board requests to hold a 3rd compact public hearing to relocate the bus facilities in addition to further reducing parking capacity. This new plan was further developed and vetted with the community and state and local government officials in the district in Maryland. The public hearing was held in January 2023, and the staff report was published for a 10-day public comment period this past month of April 2023. Regarding the public hearing, it was held at Tacoma Elementary School using a hybrid virtual in-person format. Prior to the event, staff organized a targeted marketing and media campaign to notify customers and neighborhoods about the proposed changes and hearing date, using print and online sources, in addition to creating a web page, sending emails to community groups, posting signs, and in-person outreach at stations. Customers participating virtually could join using a Zoom link or by telephone, and there was also a live YouTube broadcast. Comments or public testimony could be provided during the hearing, but also using an online survey form. This feedback was summarized in the staff reports along with responses to concerns and was posted online. And in the following slide, I'll give a brief highlight of the project and that staff report content. The project at Tacoma will create 434 housing units, of which approximately 15% will be affordable to households earning 30 to 60% of median family income. There will also be about 16,000 square feet of neighborhood serving retail. These uses will increase ridership at the station, which saw between 4,000 and 5,000 daily boardings prior to the pandemic and has recovered to around 2,500 trips in recent months. This development opportunity is made possible by consolidating and relocating the bus and kiss and ride facilities to provide space for the proposed building while preserving and enhancing existing open space along Eastern Ave and Cedar Street as desired by the community. The project will also improve bus operations by increasing the facility capacity to 10 bays and right-size the large kiss and ride facility down to 16 spaces. There's actually an amendment to this exhibit, which aligns with the pickup and drop-off demand patterns. Lastly, the project proposes a traffic signal at the bus loop entrance on Carroll Street to improve safety for buses, pedestrians, and bicyclists crossing that intersection. The project will be funded and delivered by Metro's joint developer, EYA, and construction is anticipated between 2025 and 2027. Regarding feedback from the public hearing, staff received 736 comments, with 69% of them either supporting the project or not expressing an objection, while 31% opposed. The Advisory Neighborhood Commission for the station area submitted a unanimous resolution passed in support of the project, and the District Council member Janice Lewis-Joy also provided a letter of support. The most significant concerns expressed in the comments related to the reductions in kiss and ride spaces, bike and pedestrian facility conditions, and private development impacts. Regarding the kiss and ride spaces, Staff addressed these proposed changes in the compact public hearing environmental evaluation report by providing a detailed analysis of utilization and customer survey data, which formed the basis of the capacity recommendation. This evaluation identified that more than 80% of the 100 users of the facility was for longer-term parking needs of 2 to 16 hours in duration. Therefore, the plan proposes to direct those customers to the Fort Totten Park and Ride or to use the developer's parking garage that will be accessible to the public, while designing the Tacoma Kiss and Ride to accommodate shorter duration pickup and drop-off activity. As for the bicycle and pedestrian facility conditions, the project will add or expand pathways, significantly improve lighting, and modernize bike parking, including Capital Bike Share, as well as secured storage facilities for personally owned bikes. Regarding private development impacts, the environmental evaluation and staff report highlighted that the project design aligns with the district's comprehensive plan and small area plan, and that the district is responsible for the final review to ensure the project meets all environmental standards. The process is ongoing right now, with the next public hearing to be held on June 15, but the developer's application identifies reduced stormwater runoff, preserves heritage trees, and meets traffic requirements. As a result, staff recommends the board approve the proposed changes as originally envisioned, with staff addressing some minor comments on design details, such as the location of ADA accessible spaces that do not impact the mass transit plan amendment. With that summary of the project, I return to the board action and staff recommendation, which is for the approval of the compact public hearing staff report on the proposed changes at Tacoma Metro Station and the associated amendments to the mass transit plan. This concludes our presentation, Mr. Chairman, and I'll hold for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the work that staff has done over a very long period of time on this particular project. I will open it up to members of the committee first for questions or comments. Ms. Babers.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that great overview. So, Chair, the Mayor of the District of Columbia received a draft letter from the Montgomery County Executive related to this project, and we just want to know if the Maryland representatives have any comments.
I will, through the chair, ask Mr. Drummer if you have any comments.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Babers and Mr. Chair. So I want to acknowledge that 2 days ago, as you stated, on May 9th, the Montgomery County Executive submitted a letter to the Washington, D.C. Mayor with two things. One, supporting the Tacoma Park project, and secondly, to request postponement of the board vote scheduled today to allow for further review and community consultation. So after gaining additional insight and thoroughly reviewing and reconsidering years of past reviews, community consultation, analysis, coordination, and agreements, our board vote today will be in support of proceeding with the district plans and the proposed changes in lieu of postponement.
Thank you, Mr. Drummer.
So, thank you. Based on Maryland representative's viewpoint, the mayor has no issues with this.
Okay. Other questions, comments, members of the committee? We will have a full board discussion about this as well, but is there anybody else on the board who wants to speak at this point? All right, seeing none, I will ask Ms. Ellison to call the roll. I'm sorry, I first need to move approval of the acceptance of the public hearing staff report and approval of changes at Tacoma Park Metro Station. Tacoma Metro Station. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Babers.
Thank you. Chair Letourneau.
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. And with no further business to come before the Finance Committee, we will stand adjourned, and I will turn it over to Mr. Drummer for the Safety and Operations Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Letourneau, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Operations Committee. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any objections by members of the committee on the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now to approval of our minutes from the 27th of April meeting. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Hearing none, The minutes are approved as well. So today we have 3 information presentations. The first is a safety management update with a focus on labor management collaboration. The second is a summary of Metro's quarterly performance report and also highlights of our Silver Line Phase 2 operations. And the third presentation is an update on Team Metro's plans to consolidate our call center access to our system. Without any further ado, I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Impastato and Mr. Dwyer to begin our first presentation.
This presentation
Can you pull the mic closer? Thank you.
In May of 2022, we established the Joint Labor Management Safety Committee in accordance with the requirements of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill. The committee includes representation from all 5 of Metro's unions and meets monthly. Over the past year, the committees reviewed and approved Metro's agency safety plan, as well as our safety performance targets. We also initiated an expansion of the purview of the committee to align efforts with the implementation of our safety management system. The committee spearheaded the safety culture survey efforts we completed late last year with MITRE and has been working to implement plans to address the findings. Additionally, the committee has served as an avenue for the escalation of safety risks and concerns, as well as a conduit to improve our voluntary safety reporting programs. We'll continue to expand these efforts throughout the year, and the committee is currently preparing to review feedback received on the agency safety plan and will assist in the revision process as it progresses. One of the most significant efforts of the Joint Labor Management Safety Committee is to expand and improve Metro's industry-leading voluntary safety reporting program. The voluntary safety reporting program has 4 main objectives: simple and transparent processes for reporting. This includes a hotline with email and telephone calls answered by an individual in the safety department 24/7. Callers may choose to remain confidential. The hotline is used for urgent conditional issues that require response by the safety department. Safety risk coordinators are departmental staff who have dual reporting structure within operations and infrastructure and safety, who oversee safety committees which review conditional issues and procedural risk as part of Metro's safety risk management process. And a confidential close call reporting system, which is the first program of its kind in transit, where Metro partnered with a third-party data management service to enable reporting of safety issues by employees in a confidential manner. Metro's confidential close call reporting program shares many traits with reporting programs developed in other transportation, such as aviation and railroad best practices. Metro's voluntary safety reporting program is regularly reviewed by the Executive Safety Committee to ensure clear procedures and accountability. This committee is comprised of senior leaders at the agency to ensure appropriate urgency is established to rapidly resolve safety concerns and issues. Lastly, our efforts with MITRE are working toward better management of data from these programs to create a unified approach that enables advanced analytics and establishes a path towards predictive capabilities to address indicators of risk before risk is realized in the operating environment. I look forward to providing additional updates to the board as we roll out changes and improvements to our voluntary safety reporting program. Now to shift to safety performance benchmarking. As part of our data-driven implementation of safety management systems, we perform annual benchmarking activities to identify Metro's performance relative to our peer agencies and establish targets for improvement. Data is extracted from the FTA's National Transit Database and is normalized across agencies using 10 million vehicle miles to ensure adequate comparisons. We regularly engage with our peers to identify improvement initiatives and share our progress. These charts show the range of peer agency performance in light blue over the past 5 years. Metro performance is represented by the dark blue trend line. The charts depict 4 main metrics: rail collisions, rail derailments, rail customer injuries, and rail employee injuries. Each point in the trend line represents a rate per 10 million revenue vehicles. With regard to collisions, which include any collision with objects on the right-of-way and collisions between trains, when compared to our peers, Metro has the lowest overall rail collision rate, which has decreased 12% since 2018. Historically, we've outperformed our peers, and in calendar year 2022, 85% of collisions were due to intentional acts. This includes placing objects on the right-of-way. With regard to derailments, Metro has performed as an industry leader. This includes any derailments on mainline tracks of trains and work equipment. In 2022, Metro outperformed most of our peers at a time the rest of the industry is seeing increases in mainline derailments. In 2022, there were 5 work equipment derailments and 0 passenger vehicle derailments. That represents a 71% improvement since 2018. With regard to customer injuries, Metro has outperformed our peers and continues to do so in 2022, ranking second lowest. With regard to employee injuries, Metro's performed better than average compared to most of our peers. Employee injuries, while generally increasing over time, are still outperforming peer agencies, and in calendar year 2022, Metro was the second best performing in this category. Excluding assaults on employees, slips, trips, and falls account for the highest number of employee injuries. The safety and readiness team at Metro regularly meets with the operations team to review performance data and develop targeted safety improvement initiatives. My colleague, Mr. Dwyer, will now briefly review several actions that we are undertaking to improve rail safety.
Pardon me. Thank you, Jose. As this board is well aware, Metro has implemented a data-driven return to service plan for the 7000 series fleet to safely return to service. Metro continues to work collaboratively with the WMSC to execute our wheel set mitigation plan, which will be accomplished by an increase in interference fit and press tonnage for the wheel sets. Currently, all 7000 series cars are receiving back-to-back measurements on a 15-day interval. The expected transition to a 30-day interval should be sometime in June. I believe we are now at the point we are running our highest amount of 7Ks in service. We reached 50 in passenger service yesterday. And just to recall, as recently as last August, we routinely had as few as 6 7K consists in service each day. This is quite obviously a testament to the hard work of our staff across all levels of the agency, but most especially Shanita Wilkinson and the rail ops teams. With regards to ATO, the project continues to move forward on the return to automated train control. GOA2 is intended to enhance safety by reducing the chance of human errors, such as running red lights and moving without permission, and is intended to provide a smooth, safer ride for customers. The teams have established a strategic testing plan that has allowed us to perform preliminary test runs prior to formal integrated testing. During the preliminary test runs, we have been able to identify and mitigate issues managing our resources and the impact to track access, and we will be transitioning to the resource-heavy formal integrated test runs in short order. With regards to the operational safety and working groups, Teresa mentioned, and I believe it's a great example of partnerships between safety and readiness and the operations teams. These sessions are meant to address root causes of safety issues. To date, it has developed mitigation for station overrun incidents, including increased and targeted operator training, hotspot analysis, employee awareness, and operational oversight. It is also supporting Metro's return to ATO. The Rail Safety Oversight Coordination meeting takes input from safety data sources and field checks and converts it into a conversation with staff on root causes and ways to mitigate risks. For the radio infrastructure replacement, as someone who has worked a great deal in the field in their career, I can attest to the fact that radios are a safety critical asset. The radio infrastructure replacement project continues the effort to replace the 490 megahertz system with a new 700 megahertz system to provide voice and data communication in above and below ground stations for the entire operating area. Teresa mentioned a reduction in customer injuries, and certainly the escalator rehabilitation and replacement program is a key part of this. Metro is replacing 130 escalators at 32 stations by 2028, starting with the oldest, least reliable escalators. Since the project began 2 years ago, 39 escalators have been replaced, and most recently the escalators at the north entrance of Lafayette Plaza. Replacements are in progress for 11 escalators at 9 stations currently.
Now moving to review our bus performance compared to 7 peer agencies. Again, the depictions of the light blue represent with regard to bicyclist and pedestrian injuries, in 2022, bus outperformed most of our peers with only one peer with better performance. There has been a 90% improvement since 2018. With regard to collisions, Metro's performed better than average. Collisions include both preventable and non-preventable collisions. Non-preventable collisions are classified as incidents where a vehicle strikes our bus in traffic. Overall, we've had a 35% improvement since 2018. Metro's rebounded from performing below average in 2019, and performance is now slightly better than average compared to our peers. With regard to customer injuries, we have continual improvement over the past 5 years with a 45% improvement since 2018. Despite this improvement, our peer agencies have also improved, and Metro remains average. We've been working very closely with our peer agencies to identify opportunities to implement targeted improvement initiatives to reduce customer injuries throughout the system. With regard to employee injuries in 2022, Metro Bus performed better than average compared to most of our peers. We have the second lowest injury rate for employees with a 28% decrease over the previous 5 years. Excluding assaults, the leading injury categories for bus employees in calendar year 2022 were collision related. My colleague, Mr. Dwyer, will now briefly review several actions that Metro is undertaking to improve bus safety.
The improvements in bus and safety statistics are the direct results of initiatives undertaken by Senior Vice President Jones and his team, ably supported by Teresa and the Safety and Readiness team. For instance, DriveCam is an industry-proven technology that is triggered by bus performance such as hard stop, sudden acceleration, or severe cornering. Bus operations uses the footage generated by DriveCam to address at-risk behaviors before they lead to collisions or onboard injuries. The Safety and Readiness team, including training, review DriveCam events and use them as teaching and coaching moments for operators. As I think Teresa and I have both discussed with the board previously, we're really looking to focus on leading indicators, not lagging indicators, to take care of hazardous issues before they result in injuries. Defensive driving is the basis for all safe motor vehicle operation, and I think the Bus Operations Communication Center does a wonderful job continuing to push messages to bus operators about defensive driving techniques to address incidents at a large variety of safety hazards, most especially operations at intersections, which I think across the industry is probably the most dangerous area to drive through. We have enhanced partnerships across the enterprise to address safety issues identified from data analysis. These partnerships are as varied as cross-departmental in-field meetings on accident hotspots with planning and the police, to partnerships with MTPD on operator safety, to working with occupational health and wellness on forums to facilitate awareness of fatigue. With regards to the implementation of SMS, I think everything we've discussed today and previously really shows that, in my opinion, bus operations and safety and readiness collaborates more than probably any two departments at this agency. I think given the fact that we provide about 14,500 bus trips a day, that's incredibly important.
Beginning 2 years ago was the first implementation of our agency safety plan. Metro worked with our Metro Access contractors to improve the quality of reporting. A stronger reporting culture with the use of DriveCam
is believed to be a factor in the increase in the number of incidents noted over the past 2 years and should be viewed as reflective of the safety culture improvements that will enable better development of initiatives to reduce risk throughout the operation. With regards to collision metrics, continued increase in incidents per revenue vehicle mile have resulted in an overall 80% of increased incidents since 2018. Again, of note, we believe the improved reporting was contributory to the increase in incidents moving from 2020 onward. In 2022, Metro Access did underperform compared to our peers. There was an increase in non-preventable collisions. Unlike most peer agencies, Metro Access never reduced service, neither in the areas of service nor hours of service during the pandemic. Thus, we had more vehicles, trips, and customers in the operating environment throughout the past 2 years. With regard to customer injuries, Metro Access had average performance compared to most of our peers. While there's been a 19% increase since 2018, Metro has rebounded from performing below average to being average amongst our peers. In 2022, 70% of incidents were non-preventable. 65% of total injuries were collision related, with the rest resulting from falls. My colleague, Mr. Dwyer, will now briefly review several actions Metro is undertaking to improve the safety of our Metro Access operation.
As Teresa indicated, our statistics in Metro Access are not where they'd like them to be, despite the hard work of Mr. Blake and his hardworking Metro staff and contractor staff. The Incident Free in 23 is a program that is meant, the goal of the program is to promote an incident-free workplace environment and frame of mind. Each month we introduce a new safety-focused theme that is incorporated in safety conversations and activities led by the respective service delivery contractors and our staff. Both Metro Access Oversight and the Quality Assurance Contractor conduct safety engagements, observations of both activities. In addition, Oversight has provided vehicle decals that function as reminders to operators about safety throughout the service day. We've really focused on improvement with data collection, and we are also in the process between the planning team, the CFO's office, and procurement in working on our next round of Metro Access contracts. And I think we're getting some industry help with regards to industry best practices, both with regards to contract provisions, but also with regards to safety. And Suzette Moore will actually have a team of our current vendors and potential vendors in here within the next month or so to chat with us about what we might be able to do better on the contract for our purposes and potentially for theirs. Metro Access is really focused on an enhanced utilization of DriveCam. They use it similarly to bus, but they're actually piloting a program as well that we have a couple of key users who actually have the ability to look at DriveCam real time. And I think we're all anxiously awaiting kind of the results of that and how we may apply it across the agency potentially. And we were really interested in a vendor we had in a couple of months ago, Teresa's team and the operations team, and Christian Blake had them in. We were looking at pre-service fitness evaluations that weren't done by a human being. So not necessarily checking on somebody's contemporaneous potential impairment illustration, but really having kind of an AI system where we'd have people check in with a computer on a daily basis. So we have not moved forward on that as of yet, but we are working with the vendor and reaching out to our industry peers to find out what else is being done in the industry, because obviously, you know, a key focus of SMS is making sure that our staff are fit for duty every day when they're carrying our customers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This concludes the information that we've presented for the board, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Impastato and Mr. Dwyer. I think 2 words describe what we've heard today: refreshing and encouraging. And I just want to say thank you for the focus, the teamwork, and the impact that you've had so far. At this point, I'll open the floor for comments by committee members and then by board members. Dr. Lowe.
Thanks for this presentation. Regarding where we are in terms of like bus safety,
there's so much oversight on rail safety, and we spend so much time talking about it. Of course, like bus safety is equally important and is like at this point like half the ridership. I know this is an extremely long road to hoe, but could you comment a little bit on whether you're thinking about using the drive cam footage and how the drive cam footage is being used to promote just culture within bus operations?
Absolutely. One of the cornerstones of Metro's implementation of our agency safety plan was to make it multimodal. So despite the regulatory requirement for the agency safety plan governing Metro Rail, we've elected to implement it system-wide. So our ASP governs bus, rail, and Metro access equivalently. So all of the actions that we're undertaking in the implementation, including just culture, apply equally to all modes. And one of the things that we're looking at with DriveCam is identifying not only practices that could be precursors or indicative of potential problems, but also identifying practices that are indicative of quick reflexes and model operations. And we're encouraging the sharing of that information with employees. So not only are we identifying opportunities for employees to improve, we're also seeking to highlight appropriate actions that our bus operators have taken.
I mean, I think that's wonderful, right? Because it's a huge culture change to you don't want to only hear from the boss when you've done something wrong. And I think that our bus operators they're dealing with an extraordinary environment right now, just in terms of the traffic violence that's out there, but also what's happening on the bus. And anything that we can do to give positive feedback and encouragement, I think is great. You mentioned, generally speaking, not on this slide, but I think the next slide, that there are safety issues that we're uncovering using data that they're not about the operators. They might be about the environment. And so you said there's an enterprise-wide approach to we uncover these other issues and then deal with them. Can you give an example? I mean, I understand those words, but could you give me an example of what's a safety thing we found and then fixed?
So the fixed, I'd be reticent to say, and we can get back to that on Dr. Lowe.
Okay, I get that maybe.
Yeah, no,
nothing's ever
but
fixed.
just as a for instance to that. So I think bus is really on top of the statistics, and as we discussed, the looking at drive cam, et cetera. So if they're looking at preventable accidents and they look at different kind of intersections that are hotspots, they've gone out there with MTPD to try to get some guidance with regards to, hey, do we need a special rule through here? Is there something else we need to incorporate into training or instruction for the bus operators to come through here? So it's really trying to, I think bus really has the relationships throughout the agency, not to say, hey, we have all the solutions, but to really work with safety and readiness, work with MTPD, work with planning, because I think planning with regards to, the amount of time you have to do a trip, is somebody who used to be an operator for a living, occasionally in an effort to get more service out there, agencies really cut that recovery time more than we actually should. So I think we do get all sorts of feedback with regards from operators, from the union, and work with bus planning to really try to fix some of that. And I do think having the appropriate runtime is really a safety imperative that most people may not realize.
And do we feel free to even say, go to DDOT and say, this intersection is en fuego? What can we do?
Yeah, bus, oh, go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah, I can give a concrete example of a scenario in which that happens. So we started noting an increase in mirror damage at a specific intersection.
I have noticed that too. Yes.
And when we dug into it, the Joint Labor Management Safety Committee worked with bus and safety and operations, and we realized that the mirror damage was ultimately caused by a tree that had overgrown. Obviously, this condition did not occur overnight, but the tree was massively encroaching. And that created a risk not only for mirror damage, but also for our passengers having to step down off the curb, and then board the bus in an atypical manner. We were able to cooperate and collaborate with DDOT. We reported the tree, they took it out, and we resolved that issue.
obviously something that had been in existence for a number of years, but we hadn't had the type of forward-thinking data analytics coupled with employee reporting filtered through the lens of their experience to identify that issue.
Okay, that's really helpful. About the Metro Access Service performance, you mentioned like all the peers for the benchmarking, like a lot of them limited Metro Access Service during the pandemic. But I thought that the performance indicators were already normalized for service levels.
They are. They are normalized for service levels. However, with regard to issues, severity is not necessarily normalized. So improving the reporting for incidents that would have been non-severe that otherwise Metro would not have known about.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
we believe
It's
all-
Mad Max out there. People are driving like crazy. You can't normalize for that part. Okay. I feel like I hear Christian Blake's name a lot. I've never met him, but it just seems like he's doing a really great job. So I just wanted to mention that. I noticed that the Accessibility Advisory Committee mentioned his name too.
He's the type of person who leaves a meeting when he gets a call from a customer. If you see him at meetings here or anywhere else, he's the type of person who makes sure that his customers get the ride they're looking for. So he's a very impressive person, and we're very, very lucky to have him. I appreciate you mentioning that.
I'm honestly just curious at this point.
We'll get him to a board meeting.
And about one last thing about the Metro Access data. Are these data aggregate across our vendors and Abilities Ride?
Yes.
So have we ever like broken it down to be like which way is safe? Like is the safety? Do we think the safety performance is like pretty much the same like across all these options, or?
That is something that we've started performing in analytics with regard to breaking out and creating key performance metrics across the board with our vendors. That was partially a result of the increased reporting. We started seeing vendors that really did an excellent job communicating to their staff have spikes in incidents. So we dug a little more deeply into that and determined that most of those increases were non-serious outcomes that otherwise would have gone unreported. So we're currently working right now to develop key performance metrics for each vendor as part of our agency safety program, and we're working collaboratively with them. We anticipate we'll probably get that within the next calendar year.
I think that's huge, and I think it's also just like really interesting and like the right way to think about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, your slide 19, you mentioned the communications and the radios. In addition to our own internal enhancement in that area, the thing that has happened or has been mentioned when we've had incidences is the coordination with the jurisdictions and other parties. So how is that, which you highlighted here this morning, enhancing those efforts or better coordinating those communication efforts?
So I think anytime you have an improved radio network, Chair, it will always kind of improve coordination with those efforts. I think across the enterprise, our real focus on kind of improved coordination is having the fire liaison embedded in the current rail control center, but also moving them over to Eisenhower once we're moving in there. But also we've moved an MTPD officer into the control center probably about 6 months ago. We're still in the process, I think, as we're all aware, of staffing up on the police end. So we'll continue to kind of increase the number of hours they're in there. I do think between some of Teresa's team that is in the control center, the mission assurance coordinator, and the police department, the kind of coordination on incidents has gotten a great deal better. There's certainly more to improve. There is, Chair, some complication with regards to, I think in a perfect world, we would love to have an aligned radio system. I'm not totally read in on that, but I know that's been a complication that we have not been able to overcome this far. This is really about functionality for our teams.
Yeah, and that's the thing the entire region would love to have. And
yes, sir, of course.
Always works toward it, but it's very difficult to do, as you can imagine, as you well know. And Teresa, your slides 18, 20, and 22, the consistent above average performance or industry leader in a lot of cases. I mean, this is great to have, and putting it like this, but and this is not your job, but how are we going to communicate this out to our stakeholders, our funders, and our riders and the public? Because people just do not know this. This is a total disconnect between what is reality and what people think about WMATA. And so just an observation, just a thought. Again, I know it's not your place to worry about communications, but I think that's the one thing that struck me when I looked at this. Because I think people, particularly some of our stakeholders, would be shocked if they saw even these three graphs or three charts.
Mr. Chair, maybe I'll make a comment on that, because you're right. It's Teresa and Brian's plates are full, so we don't want to make them do communications as well. But this is one of those pieces that we've been talking about. So we're working towards getting a lot more information out, probably around the end of June, on this whole idea of where we are for our upcoming kind of fiscal scenarios, which could be really detrimental, or quite frankly, how do we create a vision of what Metro could be to support what the region could be long term. And in that, I think what we want to do is have a fair amount of little, like, if you will, subdecks or white papers that the team is working on. And some of them are how we're managing this place from a fiscal point of view, how we're, every tax dollar is important, and how are we putting that to work. Other things are service performance, but one of them is obviously safety performance, right? And these are the kind of facts. So I appreciate you mentioned that. So obviously, I've been kind of saying this since I've been here, and I want to be really clear. We are going to have days. So sometimes I'll say, hey, we are a very safe system. And then something will happen, which is like a smoke incident at a station. Outside my first week, when we had a big issue at DuPont, 99% of our smoke issues are someone has a bag of chips or a trash, throw it across a parapet wall or some issue. It goes next to a light, and it gives off the smallest amount of smoke that if you were in your house, you would just move the pot off the stove, and that would be it.
I don't throw bags of chips in my house.
I meant the level of smoke, board member. Something of such limited significance that you wouldn't do. Our agency, though, has an enormous amount of scar tissue related to the Lafont incident, rightfully so in a lot of ways. So we'll then get a tweet that says Metro's on fire, and Arlington County or DC Fire will have 15 apparatus at a station
For a bag of chips.
and there's nothing. Right? So they're our awesome partners. We want them there. We want to be overly cautious on everything, obviously. But this is part of what Teresa and Brian are working through to kind of get a better label on what is a significant event versus what is something that any normal person would just use a fire extinguisher in your home or a rail station or anywhere else and move on with life, versus dumping thousands of passengers off of trains, which creates all these other safety hazards. So if you take someone with a disability, as a good example, and put them off of a train at 8 o'clock at night in the snow, you're certainly not creating a safer environment for that person. So trying to really build the agency towards true risk-based management versus just everything is a sledgehammer. So I'm glad that you brought this up, because we'll also get, oh my God, the wheels fall off the trains here. The wheels don't fall off the trains here. We had one derailment. That same rail series train have run now probably 500 million miles. The team has worked with our partners at WMSC to bring that fleet back in a very methodical, safe way. But if you look across our industry, we are an industry leader of running a safe system. And I think we should acknowledge that when we have issues, but we should, to your point, Chair, be really proud of how well the workforce is delivering a safe system. And so it's our job, I think, to put these graphics into better understandable things for our region. And I think that's what we would like then to work with the board to better, how do we get everyone to better understand these topics? Because when you say the reality of someone that rides the system every day, they actually know it's safe because they're on the system every day. A lot of the people that say we're not safe are people that are not on the system, and it goes back to maybe Twitter not being the reality that some people think it is. So thank you for calling that. The last thing I want to mention, if I don't sort of belong, is that the point that I really am kind of really feeling the best about here is how Brian and Teresa, you could see two parts of our organization completely hand in glove at the hip together. And I don't think that has culturally been always the case at Metro. And I'm really proud of how their teams, and they push each other. And the teams are pushing each other in a very collegial way. But this integration is what's making us change culture. And culture is the thing that will take the hardest and longest to do. So I'm really proud of the work that they're doing.
Thank you for that. And again, great report, as the chair said, and appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin Proctor?
Hi, good morning, team. Thank you so much for this report. I just wanted to highlight a few things that I find wonderful about this piece and then ask just one small question. I know that we are moving in this whole, what I hear is prevention, targeted prevention, in-time action if something occurs, and then you have the post-traumatic support, not just for our operators, but also for our community. I think this is a beautiful model, and I know you need to move forward in that vein. That is great. My question, in addition to the community outreach and contact that we have with all of our community and stakeholders, is can we speak a little bit just about the safety improvements that are taking place with regards to our escalators and elevators? I know there's some really fabulous things taking place there. I'd love to hear some of that.
I'd say as mentioned, Director, I think the key to really some of the improvements is the replacement and rehabilitation of what we have in place. So I apologize, I don't have all the customer injury data in front of me, but Rodolfo and Mitch are two of the hardest working people here. I think they're really on top of kind of escalator safety and the capital work led by Andy to get that done. I would say that, part of what is improving escalator safety is actually the standards that the industry has put in place to make those safe. And it's wonderful from a safety standpoint. Sometimes from a service standpoint, it's not the greatest because those escalators will shut down in a heartbeat with anything going on. So I think we're really focused on the safety aspect, but we're also focused on the service end of it, where we have station staff who are reporting that as quickly as they can to get that repaired and fixed and back up and running.
Also, with regard to our escalator rehabilitation program that improves the reliability and safe operation of the escalators, there's also a behavioral component with regard to our customers utilizing the escalators, and that's something that we're working with targeted communications campaigns. When we reviewed the data associated with customer injuries on escalators, we found a lot of trends that we are able and empowered to address with our customers. First and foremost, folks bringing luggage, strollers, mobility devices onto escalators have contributed to injuries and issues in the past. We're encouraging folks to utilize other vertical transportation, i.e. elevators, if you have a carriage, if you have a mobility device, or if you have any concerns ascending or descending the escalators. We've also improved our communications to folks relative to holding the handrail, remaining clear, leaving adequate space between you and an individual in front of you. All of those behavioral components of customer injuries are things that we really need to continue to be diligent in our communications and outreach efforts, better inform customers how to take the safest path as they navigate the Metro system.
Great, thank you so much. And just wanted to highlight that because I know sometimes people get frustrated if the elevator's not working or if the escalator's not going. We are moving in this direction so that we're providing appropriate safety and service for everybody. And our elevators are becoming back with even more accessibility products for my community. So I just wanted to highlight that and thank you guys so much, your team. And we're looking forward to meeting Mr. Blake.
Thank you very much, Director. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Thank you, Chair Drummer. As everyone else has said, this is a really impressive report. I love these trend lines, and I think the presentation of this data is really done in a very helpful way. It's very clear, although we do need to translate it probably for the broader public in the way that Mr. Clark was just saying, because this does demonstrate we are a very safe system. With that said, I have a question about the employee injuries in the Metro Rail context. I want to understand the trend line a little bit since it is increasing, going in the direction we don't want it to go. You said it includes assaults on employees, slips, trips, and falls, employee stress, other things. Do we have data, like, what does the data show about what is driving the increase? Is it more assaults? Is it more slips, trips, and falls, I would wonder why that would occur. Can you just dive into that a little?
The increase is primarily assault related, as well as we've had a precipitous increase in psychological concerns resulting from critical incidents which occur throughout the system. So if there's a violent crime or a suicide attempt throughout the system and our employees are witnessing that, we've had an increase in psychological trauma related injury reports, which for the purposes of NTD merit reporting, and we've stepped up our employee assistance program and critical incident stress management efforts to account for that. Slips, trips, and falls generally tend to ebb and flow throughout the course of the year in accordance with conditions, more slips, trips, and falls in wet seasons. We haven't really noticed anything atypical in terms of the increase.
That's helpful. Thank you. I mean, so it just like everything else with the system, there's a lot that we can't control that impacts our safety data, non-preventable collisions and such, and the other aspects of society that are coming into the system. But I think the response that WMATA has been putting forward has been really, really helpful with employee assistance, and I'm sure that will continue. One question about Metro Access. I think it's a promising approach to look at safety performance as part of the next set of contracts. Is that reflected in current contracting? Is that something you can speak to?
There are provisions in there about safety and non-preventable accidents, et cetera. Yeah, so they are built in there. What we're really trying to do is look at how the industry handles that and really hear from the vendors. Some of the vendors we use work not only nationally but internationally. And at least from past experience, I think I've seen sometimes talking to the contractors or vendors directly about best practices and how you can risk share and perhaps reduce costs is really helpful. So Suzette and Yatandi are leading that for us, and we're very anxious to kind of engage in that dialogue.
That sounds very promising. So I encourage you to continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for a great presentation and continue to do great work.
Thank you, Chair.
So we'll move to our next presentation on our quarterly performance report, Silverline Spotlight.
Thank you, Chair Drummer and members of the board and the committee. I'm Tom Webster. I'm Metro's Chief Planning and Performance Officer, and I'm here this morning with Jordan Holt, our Director of Performance Improvement. Jordan and I are pleased to be here again this morning to present highlights of Metro's quarterly performance report. This report will review, or it covers July through March 2023, the first 3 quarters of Metro's fiscal year 2023. And for most measures we'll cover here, they're for the 9-month period. Sharing these results with the board and the public, again, helps us ensure that we are transparent on how well we are delivering a positive customer experience, and it highlights efforts and opportunities to continue to make progress. These reports also highlight how we are continuing to use data and analysis to drive our management of the system, our planning, and to support decisions. Customer satisfaction and ridership are among the most important ways we measure and track performance. Metro reconfirmed these metrics with the board's recent adoption of our new strategic transformation plan, Your Metro, the Way Forward. Of course, satisfied customers keep riding, and good, frequent, reliable service drives more ridership. And as we've shared over the last few months, satisfaction among rail and bus customers has sustained large gains, about 9 to 11 percentage points compared to this time last year. And these gains were sustained during the most recent quarter. System-wide ridership continues to increase with increases in service frequency and shorter wait times, and we are seeing strong ridership for special events like the annual Cherry Blossom Festival, Capitals Wizards Nationals games, and concerts and other events. And of course, we had multiple record ridership days in March and April on both bus and rail. Customers tell us that focusing on safety and security is necessary to continue to improve their experience and satisfaction. And of course, the committee and board received a detailed presentation 2 weeks ago about our public safety efforts, and our colleagues just presented on safety performance. So the focus of our presentation this morning will be on other key performance topics. With that, I'll turn it over to Jordan to review our performance highlights.
Great, thanks, Tom. So this slide is kind of our table of contents for what we're going to be speaking about today, but also provides the full transparency over all of the 25 metrics that are focused on in the report. So you can see from this slide how we performed on each metric against target. So the blue means that we performed better than target. The orange means we have some way to go. We're also looking at trends in the performance. So the check mark means that Q3 is trending in the desired direction relative to prior quarters. Of the 25 metrics that you see here, 17 have met target or are moving in the right direction. 6 are not meeting target or are trending in the wrong direction. We'll discuss 3 of those in detail today: access customer satisfaction, rail customer on-time performance, and crime. All of the measures that we're focusing on today are in the blue box, and they are all in our new strategic transformation plan as well. Okay. First up is rail and bus customer satisfaction. As Tom already mentioned, we've seen large improvements over the last 12 months, 11 percentage points on rail and 9 percentage points on bus. And this increase brings us closer in line with the average performance we've seen over the last 5 years, which is what the target line represents. For both modes, we know that increases in reliability, particularly better wait times, are what is the key driver, the biggest driver of this increase in satisfaction. And on bus, we also know that customers are telling us that their satisfaction is driven by improvements in prediction availability and accuracy. On Metro access, we have an orange dot here, which means we're fall short of our target. However, at 75% satisfaction, you see that it's kind of right in the middle of where we are on bus and rail. So kind of we're on par with our other modes. I will also call attention to that our target is 90%, which was very aggressive. When we set this target back in Q3 of FY22, you'll see we were performing at about 85% customer satisfaction. So 90% was a stretch, but seemed within reach. I think we underestimated the impact of eliminating shared rides on satisfaction. So you see when those were reinstated in Q1, satisfaction began returning to where we were pre-pandemic. So if you look at the first few bars over in FY20, we've returned to those levels. We do know that this quarter, customers have said that they are satisfied with our on-time performance and noticed an increase there, which we'll talk about on future slides, as well as the courteousness of our drivers. On ridership, you see here that the 33-month trend shows steady increases in ridership across all modes. You can see that on bus, we measure ridership using our passenger counter data, not our fare box. And beginning in January, that's what we're also showing here for Metro Rail. So with the completion of the installation of our new fare gates, we can measure both paid tapped ridership and non-tapped. So we're reporting total ridership, similar to how we report on bus. A few highlights here. During the first 9 months of fiscal year 23, customers took 142 million trips on Metro. Over the course of this fiscal year, Metro Bus had been carrying kind of slightly more riders than Metro Rail. As of March, Rail, that kind of percentage has flipped. Metro Rail now carries about 53% of our riders and bus 47%. You see the sharp increase in March in ridership on both bus and rail. That's related to good weather, as well as events like the Cherry Blossom ridership, or Cherry Blossom Festival, excuse me. Also, we had a few record events in March. We had record Sunday ridership related to the following the peak bloom. And although it's slightly outside of our reporting period, I did want to mention that we hit a post-pandemic system-wide ridership high on April 4th with 791,000 trips system-wide. Also, just wanted to highlight that the trends we've seen in the prior 3 quarters, with Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays being the most busy, held true in Q3 as well. Now to spotlight ridership on all our modes. So on Metro Access, as you can see in the graph, ridership has stabilized over this fiscal year. Particularly, we're carrying about 100 to 120,000 customers per month on our dedicated Metro Access vans and services. We do carry additional trips through Abilities Ride. So about every month we're carrying an additional 57,000 customers on Abilities Ride. So that's about 30% of total trips. You see that we did see a drop compared to pre-pandemic in the ridership. Part of this is related to a drop in our active customer base of about 25%. What is driving this is periodically customers do need to re-register. And we did see a drop in those re-registrations starting about a year ago, where we ended automatic re-enrollment in Metro Access service and asked customers to proactively re-enroll. We saw a big drop there, and it's since stabilized. On Metrobus, what this story tells us is what we all kind of know intuitively, is that frequency drives ridership. On Metrobus, current Sunday ridership actually surpasses where we were pre-pandemic. So every Sunday, we're carrying about 13% more customers than we did on Sundays before the pandemic. And what we know there are the ridership gains are the biggest on the routes where we added service. So in fact, Sunday ridership gains are double on routes where we added frequency compared to routes where we didn't add frequency. And we're running about 17% more service on Sundays on the frequent service network. On Metro Rail, I want to highlight the Silver Line Phase 2 ridership. So over the first 5 months of service, we hit our 1 million trip mark. We carried over 1 million trips. And we've been seeing some trends. So we know that Dulles and Ashburn are our most popular stations, with about a third of trips starting and ending at Dulles and 25% starting and ending at Ashburn. We also can see trends in where customers are going. Downtown DC is a draw as a common destination, as well as other Silver Line stations in Virginia. We also wanted to highlight this kind of fun fact here that we've carried, we see ridership to Dulles on Silver Line Phase 2 is about 5 times higher than ridership had been on the 5A, which was our bus service serving Dulles. Also driving ridership is tourist and special events. Just with Cherry Blossom Festival tourism, we carried almost 500,000 riders to and from these events. We've also seen strong ridership at sporting events and concerts as customers ride the system to get to Capital One Arena or various sporting facilities across the region. Okay, on to on-time performance. So we have had multiple service increases over the last 9 months, and that means that today about 70% of rail customer trips are faster, or at the end of March, I would say, 70% of rail customer trips are faster than compared to July. I want to caveat that it's at the end of March, because when we just opened the Yellow Line service, this number has jumped up. I guess some of those trips were because they had to divert through on the Blue Line. The Blue Plus, exactly. So every time we increase service, we changed the goal line for what it means to be on time, because we're measuring on time against those promised headways, those promised frequencies. So what this percent is telling us is how reliably we're delivering those wait times that we promised. And we're at 90%, which is a little below the target of 92%, but above our 5-year average, which was 89%. We know that key drivers of why customers are late, about 1.5% of late trips are due to evening track work or weekend track work, and then the remaining 8.5% are due to service disruptions. I think during our last meeting, there was a question about the impact of sick customer events and police related incidents. This year, sick customer events are up about 25%, and they're more frequently resulting in offloads. On average, it does, for customers who are offloaded, we know that has a big impact. For those events where that don't result in an offload, we add about 1.5 minutes to a customer trip. Police events are up quite significantly compared to last year, the same time last year. And we also know that kind of on average, each of those incidents adds about 1.5 minutes to customer trips. On Metrobus on-time performance, we're just shy of target here at 77% of our time points delivered on time. We did see some sharp improvements in Q3 relative to Q2. And in part, that's driven by a real strong focus of the team identifying the worst performing routes that serve many of our equity focused areas in the city, in the region, sorry, and focusing on improving those routes first, performance on those routes first. Strong performance has also been buoyed by the efforts to hire operators. We hired over 400 operators through March, which has also enabled us to have really low missed service, which I'll talk about in a few slides. On Metro Access, also saw improvements in Q3 in on-time performance and met our target of 92%. I do want to call attention here that we also saw improvements in the rate of excessively late trips. These are trips that arrived more than 20 minutes after the pickup window, and that fell in Q3 as well. On bus prediction availability, we've seen huge improvements over the last 9 months, about 3 percentage point improvement here. What this means is that kind of on average, we're providing real-time information for over 11,300 trips a day compared to the 12,100 that are scheduled. There's 2 major reasons why we may miss predictions for trips. That's one is that the trip didn't run. And the other is that we have malfunctioning equipment on our buses. When we look at that improvement, that 3 percentage point improvement, about 1/3 of that improvement is because we're missing fewer trips, and 2/3 of that improvement is because we're doing a better job at targeting and repairing the technology on the bus. On bus missed trips, we have almost cut in half our missed trips over the last 9 months, a 45% decrease here. This is, as I mentioned before, we've been hiring like crazy. We hired about over 400 operators in the first 9 months of the fiscal year. This has enabled, in March, we had kind of our highest number of active operators since the pandemic over the last 2 fiscal years. And really to put this improvement in context, every day we're missing 100 fewer trips in March compared to July. So that's real improvement for our customers. Onto our crime rate. So as you see, our crime rate in Q3 jumped and is not moving in the direction that we would like to see. One of the major reasons why here is we had a huge, sharp increase in motor vehicle theft. with those increasing fivefold just last quarter. A lot of this is the Kia challenge that has impacted the region as well as our customers. When you do look, you can think about Part 1 crime in two buckets: crimes against persons and crimes against property. Crimes against persons is actually down. We had about 1.1 crimes against 1.1 crimes against persons per million passengers now, compared to 1.6 the same time last year. But unfortunately, crimes against property are up. And a lot of that is what you see here with the motor vehicle theft. At the board meeting 2 weeks ago, you received a very detailed presentation of all the efforts underway to address crime. Just to summarize a few of those here, are increasing police visibility in our system through our partnerships with local police forces, as well as supplementing with private security officers. We did, in specific response to the motor vehicle crime, give out free steering wheel locking devices at the stations that were most impacted by this increase in crime. Elevator and escalator availability. This is an area where we've seen kind of improved trend performance improving throughout the fiscal year. To put these percentages in context, when you look at the elevator availability, what 98.3% availability means is that at any given time, 5 units are out of service for maintenance. 2 of these units are out of service for rehab or replacement, and 3 are out of service for corrective or preventative maintenance. On escalator availability, 93.4% means that about 43 are out of service at any given time of the 642 units for maintenance. One of the things that we heard in the prior presentation about also contributing to improved safety, but we know that contributes to improved reliability are our efforts to rehab and replace units. We have just this fiscal year have completed 7 elevator replacements and 34 escalator replacements. And that concludes the summary presentation right now, and looking forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, Tom and Jordan. So I have one question, then I'll turn it over to committee members. So MTPD has done a great job of improving their presence as a deterrent for crime. And you just mentioned crime. Is there a correlation between the crime rates that we acknowledge at different stations and those in the local community?
Yes. In fact, I heard a news article about crime in DC recently, so I actually pulled some stats for that. So in DC, motor vehicle thefts are also up. They're up 11%. Robberies are up 13%, and theft is up 24%. So you can see that we are not alone. Crime in our system is kind of spilling over from crime in the region. So yes, it is very similar. Our trends are based on similar trends in the region.
Chair, the other context I give to that, so I think Jordan hit the nail on the head. We are obviously just another part of the fabric of the community, right? So wherever in the community there's more crime, there'll be naturally a trend analysis that the part of the metro system that's in that part of the community will also see trend-wise more crime. But I think it's really important to, again, ground everything, we're not apple to apple as best you can. So we are have a significantly less crime in our system per, if you will, the million trips than you would ever have in a million residents in any area of any jurisdiction. So do we have crime challenges? Of course. No getting around that. Appreciate the mayor brought some people together yesterday for a crime summit in DC. The chief and I have had some good conversations with the attorney general and some others. We're working with all of our partners. There are pockets of crime, and there's certainly pieces of that. But overall, the system is very safe. As you know, I'm on the system every single day. We have much more officers. The one thing here I think is really important to point out too, we obviously had more crime on the system over the last couple of years, but we weren't doing as much enforcement. So I remember when the slide that says MPD arrests are up 116%, we can't have someone say, well, arrests are up. I'm not saying you would say this, Chair, but I've heard this from some people. Arrests are up, therefore crime is way up. It's no, we had crime and we weren't doing as much enforcement. So now as we're doing more enforcement, the idea is to get people, especially people that are trying to do harm to others, off the system. So we had our police annual awards recognition yesterday. I'm going to mention that in my GM report. But the amount of good work the officers are doing on a daily basis to, with their jurisdictional partners, to catch people that are wanted on assault or illegal guns, those types of things. I think it would really. We're going to get a whole report here for the board on the recognition ceremony, but there's a lot of good work going on related to that. So we're going to keep working at it. The chief is using Jordan and Tom's team are now connected really closely with the police department to really use data to drive deployment of officers and our resources. So we're going to keep trying to knock that down. But I think it's really important that we always can kind of look to Chair your comment on safety. From a safety point of view, whether system safety or public safety, we are actually safe. There will be from time to time sporadic kind of larger societal issues that, we just, presence is the best thing we can do to manage those things.
Thank you, Randy. Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jordan. Your slide 35, Metro Rail slide. No performance. There you go. So I'm curious if ATO goes well and we're able to implement by the end of the year, how does that significant change, impact how you determine what a target is?
That's a great question. We are kind of looking to see what the targets should be for next fiscal year. We do know that ATO should kind of improve the consistency of the train running times throughout the system. So we should see less variability there. We're doing, testing right now and are able to pull some data and information on what that looks like and would factor it into the target. We are also pulling benchmarking data from properties that measure this similarly. So we'll look at that, some of which do run in ATO. So we'll see kind of what levels they're achieving. BART is one example. So bottom line, we'll factor that in. I would hope to see this measure improve under ATO, which is why we're calling it out. And we're trying to pull relevant data to understand what that level of improvement could look like.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I'm asking. I assume it'll never be 100, but what's just in general, out of curiosity, as you look at this as a statistician and looking at methodology, for any of these things, where does the target stop? Does
I don't
it stop
think
at
we'll
95% or just constantly?
Around 95% is what I would say. And the reason I say that is, sometimes customers are late because they fall asleep on the train, because they meet someone on the platform. And when I look at days where we have performed amazing, we are, on schedule, the service is running like clockwork. The highest we've ever hit on those days is 95%. So that kind of tells me that's the upper bound of performance on this measure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe.
Chair, if I can just, on that, I just wanted one point, because I think Jordan's right, it's around there, Chair. The only way we're going to get to close to 100%, and the best performing systems in the world are in Asia. And if you went to, say, Hong Kong or Singapore, they run in the 99, 99.5, 99.9 some years, but it's 100% fully automated system. So full platform screen doors, the trains are all computer generated. They also have a different clientele than we just have in America. There's a much more community focus about, there is no litter, for instance, so therefore you couldn't have an issue. There are no guns, so you can't have those types of scenarios. So long-term platform screen doors is the next jump for us to get to that highest level of American reliability. And I do think we could probably get 97, 98 or something like that if we have platform screen doors, but that would be that big jump. So long-term in our capital plan.
Thank you, Randy. Dr. Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I just have to commend you, not just on a great report, but on an incredible presentation. The number of my questions that you answered during this presentation just now, I feel like you are reading my mind. Like the way that Chair Drummer just asked you a question and you were like, ha, I already have the answer. That was an amazing flex. Great job. I feel so heard by just the way that you're thinking about this. It's so good. So my question is actually about like something you brought up in a previous meeting, which is that long-term you're working towards not just like quarterly, boom, hitting us with the PDF, but like creating an online dashboard. I mean, hit me with the PDF, but what, can you tell us more about how developing the online dashboard is going?
Sure. We are on track for late June, 1st of July launch. There'll be several parts to this. One, we're aiming to have more real-time dashboard and performance information, so you'd be able to see in real time how the rail system is working, as well as the bus system and key routes there. Also, perhaps providing some real-time ridership system-wide, so you can track that. In terms of kind of similar to the presentation that you receive here, which is more the trend performance, the initial launch will focus on time performance across all three modes, as well as missed service, as well as bus prediction and rail prediction availability and accuracy. And for that, you'll be able then to drill down into kind of relevant times of day and routes, lines, kind of maybe for the rail system, we're working towards also having, you can choose your origin and destination stations and see performance at that level.
That's so exciting. Thanks for that update. Randy, I also want to just commend you and the whole team. I think that this performance report just really shows like how everything's moving almost everything is moving in the right direction. And it's such a testament. It's just, I feel like for you, like that huge like bus operator hiring photo is like also a flex. Like other transit agencies would love to have this many bus operators in their next class. It's inspiring.
I think the team is doing an amazing job. So I get to take some photos and the team really works hard every day. So appreciate what they do.
And I also appreciate your note about like what I heard from the answer to Chair Drummer's question is like, yes, crime is up everywhere. And this is something that actually I'm also looking at and research I'm doing for my day job. But not only is crime's up on Metro, but it's up less than it's up everywhere. And that actually the Part 1 crimes against persons are down. So not only is violent crime not like even proportionately up, we're actually heading in the other direction from what's happening in our region at large. I think that, you know, both perceptions and reality matter, but you respond to them differently. And we're doing the right things and providing people reassurance, but we should be letting people know just how safe Metro is. What an extraordinary, it's an island of safety in a time of trouble. And I mean, I'm frequently asleep on a train late at night. I can't pretend it's never happened and made me late. And you know, it's great, like as a woman traveling somewhere alone in the city, to have this really, really safe mobility option. And so I appreciate this conversation very much today. And I think that we should be, one of the things that we can do in order to address both perceptions and reality is to communicate more about what we're seeing in these data.
Thank you. Ms. Martin Proctor.
Hi, good morning, team. Thank you so much for that presentation. I just wanted to make just a quick note and a thanks, because that you answered one of my questions earlier. What is the breakdown with regards to the incidence of individuals that actually needed medical attention versus individuals that actually needed escort service off, that we're actually committing physical crimes. Thank you so much for really looking at that data and breaking that down. And it also shows that Metro is not just here to enforce, appropriate behavior, but we're also here to be in service if somebody is in need of medical help and physical attention in that manner. Thank you so much for bringing those numbers to bear. I did have one question, and do forgive me if this brings extra work to you guys, but it won't necessarily be so. With regards to the bus availability, I heard a lot of things that we look at that are affecting those numbers, but I didn't hear weather or construction. And I know personally the times that I've been on the bus, I've got amazing bus operators that say, okay, team, we're going to slow down a little bit now. The weather is kind of acting funny, so just please mark that in time. Or team, we're going to have to make a little bit shorter, sharper trip around the particular construction area. And I'm not sure if that is actually included or embedded in this information, or if that is something that we can also possibly take a look at.
Yeah, we do know that that is one of the main reasons buses are late, which you see here happens about 12 to 14% of buses that aren't on time are because they're late. And one of the main drivers of late trips is the traffic, the construction, the weather, etc. We do look to see, I think our regional partner, the Council of Governments, has some interesting data that looks at kind of the levels of traffic in the region and how that has kind of fallen over the pandemic and how it has kind of returned. And we're pretty much at like where we were prior to the pandemic. So you can see that, I think, when you looked at these numbers earlier last fiscal year, et cetera, we were running kind of more frequently early than we were late. And now we're back to those patterns where we're running late. A lot of it is traffic. And some of that is when it's predictable, we can factor that into running times, but when it's unpredictable, right. That shows up.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And just, a kudos to my operators because they definitely take that into consideration and they communicate it, at least on the buses that I've been on, to the team that they are shepherding across the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Letourneau?
Thank you. Well, aside from worrying about Tracy late at night on Metro now, I'll like text you okay? Stay awake. Can you go to the Silver Line slide real quick? So the 5A, did the hours of that bus, I just don't remember, did that match what our operating hours are on the train? Or did it start earlier?
5A was more hours, if I recall them.
Yeah, so
started earlier.
It was. Well, what I'm trying to get at is I think that the piece that we're missing right now on providing service to Dulles Airport are the employees. Because those early shift employees, flights start leaving because they fly over my house at, before 6 a.m. So they get there really early. And so, I do think there's an opportunity there for us if we could figure out how to do it. And I think the 5A, and I don't know, we'd have to go back and look. I'd be interested if you wanted to just at some point look at that data, if we had a lot of early morning ridership earlier than what rail runs on 5A, whether, it's worth trying to find a way to provide some level of service to Dulles early. I don't know if you have, I know, Randy, we've talked about that before. Yeah. It's kind of a larger issue, but.
So Tom and Leroy and Brian's team are actually working through this concept a little bit. Part of it is too, I've had one conversation, so it's not literally we very, very initial with, MWA and saying, what demand do you see? National is different, obviously, because the time in National is a little different. Although with that said, Saturday and Sunday, National is not different because we start late on Saturday and Sunday comparatively, right? So we want to also not solve one problem and have another problem from not just a service, but an equity point of view. Yeah. Part of this too could fall into the conversation what the district decides to do with 24-hour service, because if we're going to run earlier bus service, where does it connect to? And so a good example is if we run 24-hour bus service on our biggest core corridors, then naturally the 5A might start at a certain time, and then you would start not just picking up a L'Enfant, you might pick up at 2 or 3 places in the core to make all those connections to then get to Dulles, right? So there's work started to go around this time. I don't know if you have anything extra on that or if I covered it, but.
Just one add, I think you covered it, but there's nearer term incremental opportunities, and then also as part of the Better Bus Network redesign, visionary network work, we are looking at bigger and longer term views of how to best serve the workforce, in particular late night, early morning.
Okay. Well, for those who weren't there, which is everybody but me and Randy, Jack Potter of MY yesterday told Randy that he was glad that he didn't have his job. So, there was great synergy and collaboration, though, between Jack and Randy at the Loudoun County Chamber of Commerce yesterday in terms of a lot of the stuff that we were working on jointly. So hopefully we can continue that and get some information from them on what those service needs are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAndrew.
Thank you. This is great. Two questions while we're on this slide. Do we have origin data for folks not in Virginia for the Silver Line? And what are those primary stations? I imagine they're the district, but it'd be interesting. There's a big job center and there's a big, airport, and seeing where those travel patterns are coming from would be good. Then I've got another question that I'll ask now. Fare evasion. I took a look back at the deck from last board meeting and the ridership numbers. It'd just be interesting to know the total kind of change over time for fare evasion, and then also just the share. I imagine it's going down because we're getting more riders. But are we leveling out on fare evasion as we speak, or is it still continuing to grow as a total?
So thank you, Board Member McAndrew. I think on both of those, I'm happy to provide some additional information. So I think just to confirm, we on the slide on the Silver Line, we have entries and what the destinations are from those stations. We do also have the reverse of this, where people are coming from to the new Silver Line Phase 2 station. So happy to provide that. And then in terms of trends on Metro Rail fare evasion, so the new fare gates have been in place since January of this year, and we have data system-wide for that. There is some variation over time, but you're correct. As ridership goes up, there's an expectation that overall fare evasion will come down some, not dramatically. But as part of a future update, happy to provide some additional data on that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Klein?
Thank you. Just a quick question on the bus operator hiring. In a prior presentation, I remember seeing an attrition rate that was surprisingly high, actually, but possibly not. And I wondered just kind of how the numbers are comparing. Like, I know we were in a deficit in terms of hiring. Are we keeping up with that now, or are we still?
Yes. So the hiring of the 400 operators has allowed us to cover attrition, plus the train operators that we often, bus operators become our train operators. So through that, it's been like a net gain of 50 to 60 operators.
Great. And do we feel that we've kind of turned the corner on hiring? These are great numbers that we're seeing, or do we expect that will continue?
We need to keep it up. So we'll be keeping at this pace for probably for another year. So and continued. So yeah, we're going to keep it up.
Okay. Thank you.
So again, thank you very much for this enlightening presentation. And we will now transition to the call center consolidation presentation. Floor is yours, Kimmy.
Hi. Good morning, Chair Drummer, members of the committee. My name is Kimmy Feldbauer. I'm the Director of Strategic Transformation and Enterprise Collaboration. I'm joined by Ms. Barbara Moulton, who's a Senior Program Manager with our Customer Experience Department. So after adopting our strategic plan back in February, we are excited to be here today to provide a highlight on one of our first transformation projects. Okay. The call center consolidation project demonstrates how our plan guided and prioritized our customer and our employees while driving progress on all 4 goals that we laid out in the plan. The consolidation project will enable our teams to give better customer service to the region. We'll have dedicated staffing plan to grow our employees in a meaningful way while improving efficiencies and enabling collaboration across the authority. We'll have better coordination with our partners throughout the region, and several $1 million in savings will occur over the next few years. So with that framework of the presentation for today, I'd like to hand it over to Ms. Barbara Moulton, who will walk through the projects in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Kimmy. Here we go. Thank you, Kimmy, Mr. Chair, General Manager, Directors, and committee members. If I can, there we go. Actually, it was your Metro, the way forward, that gave us the leverage and empowered us to tackle this legacy problem. And it wasn't easy and it wasn't glamorous, but yet it still mattered and it's important. The call center consolidation project's focus was to untangle this web, this telephone web of confusion that had been created over the years of program expansion and updates. By 2017, we had an independent call center consultant named McIntosh and Associates come in and do an assessment of our call center. And we had to acknowledge that we had about 5 or 6 numbers published all over the place. And it wasn't exactly customer friendly for callers, as you can see. And to compound matters, we had some call centers that were contracted out and our main call center staffed by Metro employees. Each was using a different technology platform. We had a high number of transfer rate at about 21%. And we found out that the industry average is about 10%. And so we really were volleying customers around a bit more than they were accustomed to. And that was an experience we didn't want to provide either for them. They didn't deserve it. In fact, last year in 2022, when ridership was still rebounding from the pandemic, almost 300 customers called us, primarily for trip planning and fares and scheduling information, and that was a steep decline from the over 1.4 million customers that had called us back in 2016. And 2016 was the emerging technologies that we began to employ here at Metro, and it changed everything for us. In fact, in 2016, when we started to offer social media as an option, since then, call volume has declined by 76%. And social media has increased by 125%. So you see customer behavior is just, changing. So I'm proud to say that this project will offer customers, all customers, including callers, an enhanced experience. We set the project bar high, really optimizing technology, which in turn aids staff as well by performing up to today's standards, giving customers what they deserve. Again, leveraging the service excellence to drive our investment and our priorities. For instance, there's no reason why Smart Trip callers shouldn't be able to get their card balance just by using the phone with self-service automation, or have easy access to multilingual capabilities. This project delivers on that. And of course, when we launch the 202 Go Metro phone number, that'll be deployed in phases, and no one will be left behind if you're using the older number, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The technology is out there to make seamless connectivity across all platforms, and will improve the self-service capabilities. We expect calls to continue to decline. That's been the trend over the last 15 years, actually. And however customers contact us, whether it's through live chat, social media, there'll be seamless connectivity. Employees will enjoy also, and this is where it's a win-win. Right now, they're toggling through multiple interfaces to be able to answer and research customers' calls. Now they'll just have one interface. What'd you do to me? You messed me up. I was doing good. There you go. Thanks. As you can see, the journey has begun. Last fall, we realigned the management of the Smart Trip contract within the customer service department, giving more of a holistic view of the service being provided as we reassessed our options. By March, we began investing in our own employees, developing plans to upskill both the management team and the staff to meet the upcoming demands of new technology and the prospect of intaking more call volume, which are both on the horizon as we decided not to renew the contract for the Smart Trip call center. We're procuring a new, and you gotta love this term, CCAS, Contact Center as a Solution. We're procuring that technology. It's cloud-based. And the added bonus to all of this is that over the course of 3 years, by the end of FY26, and not renewing the contract and doing this work in-house, the authority will save upwards of $8 million. Very happy to be able to do that. Kimmy, you jinxed me. I don't know what you did. You touched it and you jinxed me. Okay, thank you. So the benefits of the project are all customer focused. It's simple, seamless, ease of use for customers. And like I said, when the phone number 202 Go Metro, clearly it's memorable. It'll be deployed in phases, come with a marketing campaign. If you remember the old number, you'll always be patched in. Yeah, thank you. And next year, it'll be a big year for the call center, improving the customer experience. And we are very excited. And thank you all for leading the way with a strategic plan, which empowered us to really untangle that web of communication and create kind of a path forward for customers.
Okay, so thank you, Kimmy and Barbara. I will share with you that in our strategic plan, customer experience is very important. And I just want to say thank you for your proactive work in delivering optimization, efficiency, and cost savings in that process. You've answered all of my questions in the presentation, and I'll turn the floor over for comments and issues. Okay. That one. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Ms. Martin Proctor.
Hi, good morning, team. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm loving all of this. As our chair so eloquently put, the customer experience is center with regards to what we want to have happen here with WMATA. I do have one question because I didn't see it on the presentation, but I'm sure it's in your efforts and in your planning and development. As you are aware, there's a very large contingency of individuals within the District of Columbia and the DMV where ASL is their first language. Will we have on-time, in-person video ASL relay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm happy.
Incredible.
Thank you. Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you. Barbara, quick question. You talk about staff coordination, which is great. What about staff training? Is that going to change as well?
Oh, yes, that's all part of it. It started already.
Okay, because that, I mean, some of the things we've heard in the past, I think that really is the key to, well, beyond the coordination, obviously, but the training piece is equally as important, if not more so in a lot of ways.
Yes,
early on.
it's built in. It was built into the implementation plan, and it was identified. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Babers. Oh, I didn't see you. Dr. Lowe.
Just two comments. One, 202 Go Metro is a really good phone number. Nice job. Well played.
Thank you.
The very first time I interacted with a member of WMATA's leadership team was like 15 years ago when I stopped the director of planning in the hallway at COG to complain that the phone number that was on the signs to get bike parking at the stations was the wrong phone number. It was printed on like hundreds of signs all over the system. And if you called it, it was just some guy who was like, oh my God, like he would answer it and be like, I'm not the bike parking guy. It was just, but it's just, it was like just like a terrible own goal. And so 15 years later, I'm delighted to see that WMATA is modernizing its phone numbers. This is awesome. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Babers.
So first of all, Kimmy and Barbara, yes, let me echo everyone. This is great. There is nothing better than a consolidated call center. So question to make sure I'm clear, was the Smart Trip call center the only one that was by contract and all the rest of them were already in-house?
Well, Metro Access is also contracted out.
Okay, which will also be brought in-house?
Not at this phase.
Okay, yes, that's, I was just trying to get clarity as to what all was going to be brought in-house.
That's the only one that is contracted out, Metro Access and Smart Trip.
Okay, all right. And so, not that it really matters as long as the training is there, as Dr. Smith-Burke said, but are the calls, is the consolidated call center actually going to physically be consolidated? Or are they going to still be in, I guess, what maybe were various locations?
I'm sorry, can you ask me?
Are the actual physical call center employees going to physically be in one location?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm assuming they currently are in different locations? Is there different call centers?
The contracted one or the future state?
The future state.
Future state, yes, they're in one location.
Okay, great. Yes, no, I look forward to that. And I think like Dr. Lowe, I will just randomly be calling just to check.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions or comments, no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned and we will begin the Board of Directors meeting shortly.
We're going to go ahead and ask people to please take their seats so we can go ahead and get started.
Jose. Knock down again.
Morning, everyone. Paul Smedberg, Chair of the WMATA Board. Thank you for being here with us today for our Board of Directors meeting. Since we called roll at an earlier committee meeting, we'll move right to the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, I'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Does anyone have any additions or deletions from the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes for approval. The board meeting and executive session from April 27, 2023. I'd like to consider these minutes approved as presented. Does anyone have any comments or objections to those sets of minutes? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the employee spotlight. Today's employee spotlight recognizes two bus operators who acted swiftly and smartly to protect their customers when interactions on their buses were dangerous and unlawful. When I call your name, would you please rise for recognition? Bus operator Michael Johnson. On Wednesday, April 5th, bus operator Michael Johnson, out of the Montgomery Division, was driving his bus along the C2 route, headed toward Wheaton Station, when a verbal altercation erupted between two male passengers. Mr. Johnson safely pulled over his bus and approached the men to defuse the situation and keep other customers safe. When he returned to his seat and resumed his route, the men began arguing again. Mr. Johnson stopped at the bus stop on University Boulevard at Amherst Avenue. While exiting the bus, the two men continued arguing, and one pulled out a knife and stabbed the other. Mr. Johnson immediately contacted the Bus Operations Communications Center to request emergency assistance. While waiting for responders, he was able to remain calm and keep his customers aboard the bus safe and calm. Please join me today in thanking Mr. Johnson for having the presence of mind to quickly report the incident and keep other customers safe. Thank you, Mr. Next, we'd like to call upon bus operator Jamon Turner. Mr. Turner. Morning. We're going to recognize bus operator Jamon Turner for his work to protect young customers riding his bus last month in Silver Spring. In the afternoon of April 4th, operator Turner was approached by several juvenile customers who reported that a male customer inappropriately touched one of their companions in the rear of the bus. Mr. Turner safely stopped the bus, immediately contacted the Bus Operations Communications Center, and went to the aid of the young victim while they waited for law enforcement to arrive. As a result of Mr. Turner's quick thinking and response, law enforcement officers were able to locate the perpetrator who had exited the bus but remained in the area. He was arrested. Today, we applaud Mr. Turner for coming to the aid of a young customer and preventing this person from victimizing others. Next, and finally, we'd like to call upon the nine employees who are being recognized today for leading the major rehabilitation of our Yellow Line Bridge and Tunnel and the public information campaign for this project. It is because of their leadership and dedication that we successfully reopened the Yellow Line this past Sunday. Will the following employees please stand? Andrew Roth, Executive Vice President, Capital Delivery. Elizabeth Field, Senior Vice President, Project Delivery. Alexandria Zamar, Director, Capital Improvement Programs. Tatiana Kotrikova, Senior Program Manager, Rail Station Modification. Michelle Crooks, Contractor, Rail and Bus Infrastructure Rehab. Dale Rebus, Senior Director, Content and Strategic Communications. Mark Bauman, Strategic Communication Manager. Nay Cianciolo, Outreach Manager. And Sean Jordan, Major Outages Manager. Sean. Your work directly contributed to the complete rehabilitation of the deteriorating 1970s tunnel and bridge, and completing the project on time and under budget, while keeping customers and stakeholders informed every step of the way. Because of your leadership, the Yellow Line Tunnel and Bridge are now new again and restored to last for decades to come. The board extends its sincere thanks and appreciation to all the men and women who worked tirelessly on this project, and thank each of you who played an important role. Customers, once again, have a fast, more direct connection between Virginia and downtown DC, including travel to and from Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, and we thank you for leading the way in this tremendous effort. And I can say personally, as a Yellow Line rider, the preferred line, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know a lot of people in Southern Arlington, in the city of Alexandria, and that part of Fairfax County also thank you very much as well. So thank you all, and would you all please join us up front? We're going to take some photos.
two. And then we'll go.
Now we'll move on to our public comment and reports by our advisory committees and the public. First, we're going to have Denise Rush for representing the AAC. Good morning, Denise.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. I am Denise Rush, and I'm Vice Chair of the AAC Committee and Vice Chair of the Metro Access Committee and Vice President of the National Federation for the Blind of Sligo Creek. I'm representing the AAC and the public today. First, the AAC invited the directors of the board and the members to come and just to thank you for your great gift of finally having a capped fare of $4. And a lot of women, the members came, but I want to thank the men also because they brought us further down the road than the new members, which are the ladies, but I don't want the men to feel left out. So we really, we are a pair. You have a man and a woman, and we all work together, and it makes it, a happy spouse, happy house. So we are all happy. And I felt when we were at the meeting, we didn't really acknowledge the gentlemen that were on the board. So I want to do that now. Also, thank you for inviting the AAC to look at the new rail cars in New York. That was very nice. But I, being a totally blind person, I need to touch it and feel it. So I need to ride on the car. And they were in the yard, and the members that can see could fully affect, get the effect and see how the seating and the handles and rail was going, but I need to actually ride on the car so I know how it really is to give my comment. But thank you for that's never happened. A lot of things that have never happened in the 10 years I've been on the board are really happening now. So thank you. We have reached a point where we need to talk to the people who can really help us. We come to the board meetings and we want to be a solution to some of the problems and how we can make things better. And talking to the board doesn't really have the money that the individual jurisdictions have. So I really need the number and the phone number or the email or who I need to contact and tell the other members and the public to contact who controls the money and says, okay, we're going to give X amount of dollars to the jurisdiction. Talking to the board is the wrong person to talk to. We need to talk to the person that has the money or their hand on the purse. So I hope that we are able to get who we really need to talk to make them understand that we need more money for this operation and for Metro Armada to move as many people that they have to move around. We need more money, more funding, And talking to the board, I think is not where we need to start. Am I correct?
Yep, you are correct.
Yeah, well.
Denise, we have 3 people we can have you contact immediately.
Okay, well,
Randy and I can give you their names.
yes, and I can give you my email address and my number, and you can tell me, you can send it to me, and I will tell everybody, because I'm everywhere, and
Okay.
I will tell everybody we need to talk to the actual jurisdictions to get things moving. And thank you for the better bus network, but we
wrap it up, Denise.
we have to still talk to the jurisdiction. So it's kind of like when I first went blind, I didn't know how am I going to know that the elevator is going up or down? Does anyone up here know how a blind person knows that? It's a ding. The first one ding means up, 2 dings mean down. But I gotta know, somebody's gotta tell you what you need to do. And I think what we need to do is go to the jurisdictions, and here she comes. Here comes Miss Russia. Oh Lord, she wants us to do this and that. Everybody has to do it, because talking to the wrong person, you go to the foot doctor for your feet, but this board doesn't have that kind of money to keep WMATA running. So
Thank you, Denise. And if you know of anyone who has some money, we'll happily be able to talk to them.
well,
In the $100 million range should be good.
I'm really helping for the blind, but now I gotta help WMATA, because we have a great system, and we have a bus desert in PG County. 210 Branch Avenue, Clinton. There are a lot of areas, not just PG County, but in Virginia. And we all want to get around. We need to get around, and we can do it. We can do it if you want to do it. So let's do it.
Thank you so much, Denise. Pleasure, always pleasure to see you. All right, next we'll move on. We have several online comments this morning, so I'll ask staff to play those first.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Court. I'm with the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We're the leading nonprofit organization. In the DC region, advocating for walkable, bikeable, inclusive, and transit-oriented communities as the most sustainable and equitable way for the DC region to grow and provide opportunities.
Cheryl? Yeah, what about the other?
For all. We are excited to provide our support for the proposed changes to the Tacoma Metro Station. We urge the board to approve this redevelopment proposal as soon as possible. We've only been working on it since the year 2000. After seeing a number of site plans over these years, we're happy to say that the proposed plan now is far more ambitious and more appropriate to this metro station in our dynamic region. We urge WMATA to support the changes because they will increase access and ridership, facilitate additional benefits for the community and riders, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Specifically, we support the 10 bus bays, adding a bay placed along the rail tracks in close proximity to the metro entrance and facing a new mixed-use apartment building. The configuration of the site will facilitate a significant amount of housing and affordable housing, adding more riders and more opportunities for low-income riders to live at a metro station and bus hub. The Civic Plaza with ground floor retail is a benefit to transit riders, giving them new conveniences, meeting spaces, and a sense of safety from added pedestrian traffic by the entrance of the metro station. We appreciate the green space buffers proposed in the site plan, between the transit uses and the new residences and existing neighbors. We commend the proposal for retaining 1.8 acres of open space for the site while maximizing the potential for increased transit use and housing opportunities. We expect enhanced walk and bike facilities and traffic calming to ensure safe access to the metro station. Thank you.
My name is Douglas Kelly, and I live in Montgomery County, Maryland. I object to the development of the Tacoma Metro because it eliminates public parking. Public parking and development can coexist. The existing parking is a public good that the proposer irrevocably privatizes. In fact, proposed development would have more private parking spaces than the existing public lot. Eliminating public parking will exacerbate Metro's last mile problem. The Tacoma lot is not underutilized. Elimination of Tacoma parking will reduce Metro ridership and increase traffic downtown, since parking customers will abandon Metro. The suggested Fort Cotton parking alternative is not viable. Fort Cotton station is so close to downtown that driving into downtown makes more sense than transferring to Metro at Fort Cotton. As a regular user of the Tacoma Public Parking and Metro Station for 27 years, I respectfully request that the board reject the sale unless the development proposal is modified to retain at least as much public parking for Metro customers as exists today. Thank you for your consideration. Douglas Kelly, Silver Spring, Maryland.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Peter Kovar, and I live at 7112 Holly Avenue in Tacoma Park, Maryland. I previously submitted testimony on this project earlier in the year. I also served on the Tacoma Park City Council for 7 years, didn't run for re-election this past November. Given my address, which is a block and a half from the site, I've been involved for many years in discussions with EYA and WMATA about the various iterations of the project. I support development at the site, and for the purposes of this WMATA proceeding, I have 3 areas of concern. First, on parking, the elimination of the Metro spaces. Obviously, they're not kiss and ride spaces since they have meters. The elimination of the parking for Metro riders can be addressed by going with a 6-to-1 apartment unit to parking space ratio sought by Washington, D.C. And you could shift half or so of the spaces reserved for residents currently to the retail commercial category and reserve some of those spaces for Metro riders, or make it clear Metro riders can park in those spots. With the 2 separate proposed entrances to the project, this would be relatively easy to achieve. I also recommend including language in the resolution calling for analysis of cost differentials and other factors if some parking would be placed underground. That would enable a higher overall amount of parking and potentially lower overall building height. Similar language was included in the 2014 resolution WMATA adopted on the previous version of this project. On stormwater, given that there's an interstate impact with the potential for stormwater flowing from DC into Maryland, I'd like to see language added to the WMATA resolution requiring ongoing consultation with the city of Tacoma Park and affected residents of Tacoma Park. And then lastly, on traffic, we should add language to the resolution requiring ongoing consultation with Tacoma Park on traffic impacts connected to the project, including specifically pedestrian safety, which will be an important part of the project. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Hi, my name is Ilana Prus, and I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And I support the proposed changes to the Tacoma Park Metro Station to allow new housing, affordable housing, lots of new residents who can go to our local businesses, and honestly, a safer place that's filled with more people. I'm excited about the benefits that we'll get from having additional development and a reconfigured Metro Station. Affordable housing is very important to me, and I want to make sure that more people can live in what the great area that is Tacoma, Tacoma, DC, and Tacoma Park, Maryland. I love the idea of the Civic Plaza, and also the safer access to the Metro Station with more people, more eyes on the street, safer sidewalks and bike paths. And I'm really excited about the park that will be preserved, that really will help create that great community space right in the middle of Tacoma Park. And I support the changes, as I said, to the metro area. I think that the benefits are really essential, and I think that adding more people to our community here in Tacoma Park is really important for the vibrancy and for our small businesses within Tacoma Park. So please support the changes to the facility and the better access to Tacoma Park Metro and the additional and future development that this will allow. Thank you.
Tacoma Metro Station parking lot Tuesday, May 9.
My name is Peter Seiden, and I live in Tacoma Park. My name is Peter Seiden, and I live in Tacoma Park. I recommend that the board reject the staff report and its recommendations concerning the Tacoma Metro Station due to a faulty process and a faulty analysis. First, the WMATA staff has consistently misled the public about the parking at the Tacoma Metro Station, referring to it as having 144 kiss and ride spaces and no other type of parking, and that it is these fictional kiss and ride spaces that will be eliminated. For the record, there are 150 daily and hourly parking spaces and 5 kiss and ride spaces. This obfuscation has undoubtedly lessened citizen input on the matter. Second, WMATA's analysis regarding use of the parking is faulty. Its parking use data is based on parking tolls collected. I live nearby and have seen virtually no enforcement for years of the parking lot. As a result, this parking data is not reliable. Third, based on this faulty data, WMATA has jumped to a faulty conclusion that the parking is underused. We undertook our own surveys and have supplied video testimony to show that the lot regularly fills up during weekdays. And this is happening while overall ridership is still far below pre-COVID levels. Our most recent count, which was done when the second video was taken, and this past Tuesday at noon, found only one of all the daily and hourly parking spaces empty. Fourth, the environmental analysis fails to consider the effects of directing those who would park at the Tacoma Metro Station to instead drive onto Fort Totten. This would mean several hundred rush hour trips per day down clogged streets with the attendant air pollution. Those who instead, as a result, abandon Metro altogether would make it even worse by driving downtown and elsewhere. Let me just conclude by saying I am no fan of surface parking, and I support development at the site. I am a fan of the Tacoma Metro Station as an effective multimodal transit center serving the community and beyond as it has for many years. By endorsing EYA's maximalist development plan, Metro would be undermining this function, and it's worse than that. By sending commuters closer to the city center to pick up Metro, it would go against the guiding principle of a metropolitan transit system to capture riders further out, not closer in, for purposes of efficiency, for transit revenue, and for reducing congestion and pollution. At nearly 7 acres, the site can accommodate a substantial mixed-use development with affordable housing and still serve the transit needs of the community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Excuse me. My name is Rosemary Hodges. Rosemary Hodges. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, Montgomery County. Sorry about the frog in my throat. I'm really opposed to this massive development that is going to be taking off the Metro parking in Tacoma Park. I live about a mile from that Metro parking, and I rely on it to go to various places. And you just need the green space. You don't need a huge complex like this. It's very poorly thought out. Please do not give this to us. Thank you.
It's an unfinished parking lot. It's still prehistorical. The only thing that's lacking is the classic cars here. It's like a curse weighing on an entire landscape, and whoever goes too deep into this has his share of that curse. So we are cursed with what we are doing here. It's a land that God, if he exists, has created in anger. It's the only land where creation is unfinished yet. Taking a close look at what's around us here, there is some sort of harmony. It is the harmony of overwhelming and collective murder, and we, in comparison to the articulate vileness and baseness and obscenity of all this parking, we, in comparison to that enormous articulation, they only sound and look like badly pronounced and half-finished sentences out of a stupid suburban novel, a cheap novel. We have to become humble in front of this overwhelming misery and overwhelming fornication, overwhelming growth, and overwhelming lack of order. Even the cars up here in the street look like a mess. There is no harmony in the universe. We have to get acquainted to this idea that there is no real harmony as we have conceived it. But when I say this all full of admiration for the parking lot. It is not that I hate it. I love it. I love it very much. But I love it against my better judgment.
Okay, well, that is, yeah.
My name is Susan Schreiber, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Historic Tacoma, Inc., which is incorporated in both Maryland and the District of Columbia. In moving forward with the sale of this publicly owned property to the developer, EYA, and at the same time proposing significant modifications to the Tacoma Transit Center, Historic Tacoma is concerned that WMATA is promoting the construction of a massive structure that is incompatible with the Tacoma Park Historic District on the Maryland side, which the property abuts. Moreover, WMATA is proposing the elimination of green space that has been in public use for more than 30 years, as well as the elimination of the public parking lot, which, based on repeated counts by residents, is often nearly full, with the inevitable result that commuters will seek parking spaces in the immediate neighborhood within the Maryland Historic District. Thank you for your consideration.
Hello, this is Fran Rothstein. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, on the border with Tacoma Park in Montgomery County. I am calling to encourage you to retain as many parking spaces as possible at the Tacoma Metro. Without parking, I am unable to use the Metro. I am 75 years old. I walk, but I cannot walk uphill from my house to the Tacoma Metro in any kind of reasonable time. I am a native Washingtonian. I have used the Metro since it first opened. It would break my heart to not be able to use the Metro again, but without some parking at Tacoma Park, it's impossible. I cannot drive and park at Fort Cotton because during the week it is always full by the time I am ready to go downtown. If you want us to avoid using our cars, please make it easier for us to use the Metro. Thank you so much.
My name is Joan Matlack. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, and work for the federal government. My office is located in D.C. I am submitting this comment to urge you to preserve the existing parking spots at the Tacoma station. They are a vital link for many people, like me, who can only feasibly use the Metro to commute to work if there is convenient, available, and affordable parking. While I have the option to telework for my job, I believe that it is better for our society, our towns and cities, if people interact in the workplace outside of their homes. It is abundantly clear that the future of DC depends on the ability and willingness of people to make the commute into the city, particularly those of us who have the option to work from home. Up until 4 years ago, I worked in my office full-time. I had a daily commute that involved taking a very unreliable bus to the Tacoma station, followed by the Metro, and then a walk across the mall to my office. But all that changed in April 2019 when I was hit by a taxicab during my morning commute while crossing the street outside my office. My ankle was smashed, pulverized is the way one surgeon put it, and required a skillful reconstruction. While I have recovered the ability to walk and am not disabled, my ankle is stiff and far less stable, and I have ever worsening arthritis there, an inevitable consequence of such a serious injury. Now I can no longer manage the bus portion of my old commute. I can't risk taking a fall in icy weather while walking up the hill to the bus, nor can I stand for 20 to 30 minutes waiting for an unreliable bus to show up. While I have the personal resolve to commute into DC for my job, the only thing that has made it feasible for me to return to work has been the existence of parking at the Tacoma Metro. If DC wants people like me to return to their jobs in the city, it needs to make it feasible and manageable for them to commute by keeping the existing parking spaces at the Tacoma station. Otherwise, you will be putting another nail in DC's coffin. My name is...
Thank you for all the people that were here in person and people sending in the videos. Next, we'll turn and we'll hear from Mr. Patrick Sheehan and the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Good morning, Patrick. And while Patrick's coming to the podium, I just want to make it clear for people who might be listening that, WMATA itself is not promoting. It's the localities and the jurisdictions that are promoting this. It just happens to be Metro land. So they work very collaboratively with the jurisdictions on this. It's not Metro in and of itself promoting this project. Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak to you for a few minutes today. My report is going to sound an awful lot like Denise's, but agreeing with Denise, I think, is a good thing for me to do. We've learned that and the AAC. First, I'd like to, as Denise did, thank the members of the board, Ms. Helfer, Ms. Klein, and Ms. Babers for attending our meeting, and also the CFO. But the thanks really goes to all of you. Over the years, listening to us advocate for a fixed fare for Metro Access has been something we've done for over 10 years. And it was great that we got that about a month ago. What it shows me is that you've got a good team there. I listened to the reports, I listened to the discussion. It's great when you have a working team that's working towards one goal. It is very evident that you absolutely have that. Second point, Lynn Barsox has been spending a lot of time with the AA. We should make her a member. She has on the open gangway cars discussion. She has been to 4 of our meetings recently, 2 last month, 2 this month, and she just is answering all the questions that we have. I think we had up to 15 or 17 recommendations, and about 90% of the recommendations are things that have been already instituted, agreed on. So the response from the AAC concerning the open gangway cars has been very good. There's one area, and I think Denise brought it up, that is critical, and that's going to be the between car door barriers. We know that when the mock-up of the cars is demonstrated to us within a rail setting, that then we'll be able to see that the between car door barriers is something that has been taken care of. Taking that first step, thinking that there's a car there when there's nothing but air there, is dangerous. And we've run across this on the 7000 series. We solved it then, and I'm sure we can solve it now. So we are very interested in when we get that full mock-up that we can look at here in Washington. That would be very meaningful. Concerning the better bus network, I've been to several discussions on that with AAC and then also with RAC. And the one point that I would make, again, agreeing with Denise, is, and I was pleased to hear, the emphasis of improving the bus network in Prince George's County. There is a desert there, and it is very important to people to be able to have reliable bus service. That really is the backbone of what we're doing, and appreciate the work that's being done with respect to the better bus network. I think that the improvements that are being talked about, frequency of the bus service, where it's going, is going to be important. Also, that'll improve a little bit some of the Metro Access trips that will have a fixed network, but the bus and rail, really the fixed route system is the hub. A couple other areas that I'd like to talk about. One area of concern is courtesy stops. We got a report that I guess the pilot's going to be starting, I think, in June. We were a little concerned about bus courtesy stops with respect to folks in wheelchairs. If someone asks to be let off at a bus courtesy stop, making sure that that ramp is down and secure in a good fashion is very critical, so the person doesn't fall over the edge and injure themselves. We had a report in front of the AAC last month in which the wheelchair ramp was not secure and the person was badly banged up, and we want to try to avoid that. I'm not sure that putting the onus on the driver to say that, you know, someone in a wheelchair can't get off at a courtesy stop is putting too much responsibility on a driver. I just don't know about that, but we don't want to see any accidents with people in wheelchairs. So that might be something you want to take back and think about. The Waymaps project, which is the internal GPS, is being implemented, and there are people looking at the system. Started on May 1st, ends on June 2nd, which is going to be very effective. I understand that members of AAC are participating in that, so thank you for letting us do that. And then there are also members of the disability community, particularly in the blindness area, that are being contacted by the Waymaps product, so that's good. And then lastly, I'd like to also thank CFO Ms. Yutande for, I misread my agenda last week and asked her to give me a small budget update at the AAC meeting, even though she wasn't on the agenda to speak. And she did. And what she indicated to us is exactly what Denise said, is that in FY25, we've got some work to do. And the AAC understands the work we've done for people with disabilities throughout last 10 years, let's say. And we want to maintain that. And we understand what the financial obligation is going to be and the money that we need to make up. So we work for you. Anything that you think that we need to be doing, the areas of emphasis that we need to take. We love the system. We like the improvements that have been made and the headway we've made for people with disabilities. We want to keep that. And so we'll take our marching orders from the board. Let us know how we can help because we want to be there. Thank you.
We'll appreciate that.
I'm sorry. Any questions? I'm running away.
Teresa?
Any questions?
I don't know what a bus courtesy stop is.
I think that the next board meeting, I think we always got to come to the Safe Jobs Committee and mention it. But the gist is we're looking to potentially do a pilot where later at night, someone on the bus could request to get off in a safer area instead of going to, say, sometimes if there's people hanging out at a bus stop or whatnot, or if a sidewalk or an area wasn't well lit, but there's another place. Yeah. So a few agencies have done that. So the idea is just trying to think about that from a piloting. So we started to engage the AAC and the RAC just to get some feedback on that process. And then, of course, I think it's June, Operations Safety Committee. The idea is come and talk about that a little bit.
Okay, would love to hear more about the concept.
Right. Yeah. I was. It was my first time too. So I just am concerned about the steepness of a ramp if you're letting someone down on a sidewalk, let's say, or just on the street in a wheelchair. That's probably going to be too steep coming down. It just seems a little terrifying to me, but great. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for me?
Patrick, I know we say it often, but really do appreciate you and the committee and the way you engage with staff on such a constructive level. And it really has been extremely helpful, not only recently, but over the years. So
thank you. It's a team sport. Yep. We appreciate being part of the team. Thank you.
Nice seeing you. Next, Mr. Michael Leibowitz, the new chair of the Riders Advisory Council. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, members of the board. Mr. Clark, thank you as always, for having the RAC represent the rider perspective and at your meetings. So we'll say that from the rider perspective, as some of you may know and agree with, the yellow line being back is a major relief for many people, and hopefully in their wallets, as they don't have to pay for parking downtown anymore. So that's a great thing. So let's talk about that. We had at our meeting recently this month, we talked about kind of the role of the RAC and how we view it as kind of want to look at big picture things that affect the riders and also the smaller things that make life more comfortable and better for riders as well, so that we can get rider feedback and propose solutions to the board as we get them. We did, as far as our informed deliberation goes, we had several guests at our meeting a few weeks ago, the Better Bus Draft Visionary Network. That is something that we're so impressed with the team that is putting that together. Obviously, we have some questions a lot of them are route related. I know PG County has come up a few times today. We had some of those questions. And also, I know you heard this earlier in your committees, but late night, early morning Dulles rides from the core to Dulles is something that it's definitely came up at our meeting. It's something that we asked to have them consider. But and at the same time, the specter of the financial issues, of course, hangs over a lot of what we talk about with the buses. But that's discussion for another day, at least from this conversation about that. But overall, though, the direction that they're going with the bus visionary network plan is something that's very admirable and well thought out, and we're very impressed with that. The RAC also has every month we seem to be talking about the 8,000 train series, and Ms. Bowersox and her team have been absolutely phenomenal. I can't say that enough. They have been answering all of our questions. They've been one step ahead of us when we've had questions. They said, oh, we've addressed that, or we're thinking about that. And that's all good things. The RAC as a group, almost universally, I believe, has come around to beyond the general idea of the open gangways and the two cars. And really the big questions that we have remaining more focused on kind of the AAC lane, which, obviously they can speak better than we can on that one. But other than that, it's a great experience as they put that together, and it's great to watch. I know this board is considering nominees for the RAC. I think there's 4 members that you're looking at on the agenda after this. Wholly support that. Injecting new blood into the RAC is something that, I personally and the RAC as a whole are very much looking forward to, so that we can really expand our tactful rider outreach and, kind of across the transit zone, so that we can get a pulse on what's going on across the transit zone for all the riders, that we can then come together, talk about it, and put together proposed solutions as become feasible or viable for that. So again, appreciate you taking the time to review those people. And the last thing is one of the things that we've really focused on in the RAC meetings recently is a rider outreach, where members throughout the RAC, we're all from the different transit zones and areas, kind of speak to people, gauge what's going on in our areas, so that we can kind of get a better feel for it, to be the canary in the coal mine and identify any kind of developing issues of concern for the riders and from the rider perspective. And a bit of good news that we've RAC members from the red and green lines have noted that, I think all anecdotal, but that seems like enforcement for fare evasion is being observed more, and according to riders providing outreach to the RAC, that it looks like some think that fare evasion actually is becoming a little bit less. Obviously, it's still going on. I saw it yesterday coming home, but it's something that I think we're talking about perceptions a lot of times and enforcement, and it looks like we're slowly starting to turn the corner from the perception point of it. The one area that the RAC discussed as well was bus fare evasion on the metro buses, and we understand that it's there's kind of inherent difficulties in enforcement on that. We can't put that on the bus driver, and we get all that, but it's more of something that the RAC, we want to continue having a discussion on the bus fare evasion part of it. And I think one of the ways that what we talked about was understanding the statistical analysis, or getting kind of the numbers crunching when the new kind of fare structure takes place, to see if that reduces the fare evasion on the buses, or what the standard is. And that could inform how, any proposed or potential solutions to addressing that issue. Subject to any questions, that's all I have from the RAC.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? Seeing none?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Then we'll move on to the report by the chair. And as Michael mentioned a little earlier, I'm happy to report we recently concluded our recruiting efforts to fill 4 vacancies on the RAC. The vacancies are for 1 position representing the state of Maryland and 3 at-large positions, 22 applications, and conducted many interviews. I'd like to thank alternate director Dr. Bryna Helfer, who serves as the board liaison to the RAC, and John Pasek, who we know staffs the RAC, for all their work in identifying and interviewing the candidates. To ensure our advisory body operates at full strength, I move the following RAC appointments. Mark Spadley, representing the state of Maryland for a term through December 24. Lucas Habaski at-large seat with a term through December 24. Lovell Walls for an at-large seat with a term through December 23. And Dina Passman for an at-large seat with a term through December 23. I'd like to move that. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Letourneau. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. And so on behalf of the board, welcome the 4 new members of the Riders Advisory Council. We look forward to working with you. Next, I want to highlight another major milestone, the opening of the new Potomac Yard Station on Friday, May 19th, just a week from tomorrow. I believe it's been about 40 years in the making. So congratulations to all who have made this a reality. Potomac Yard, located in the fastest growing area of Alexandria, will be Metro's 98th station and ensures connectivity to and from the city, which has seen substantial population growth and new development in the last few decades. The station provides a wide range of benefits for Alexandria and the surrounding communities, including walkable access to regional transportation systems for residents in the city's northeastern area. Potomac Yard Station is expected to generate billions of dollars in new private sector investment over the long term and eventually support 26,000 new jobs and 13,000 new residences. Likely be more than that, actually. New development immediately adjacent and north of the station is a mix of retail, residential, and commercial development, including the new Virginia Tech Innovation Campus. And the city is very excited about this. As you know, Virginia Tech is spending $1.5 billion on the new campus there. We have Amazon and its new campus just over the border in Arlington, close by, and there's 4 other headquarters there in Potomac Yard already in existence and people working there. So a lot of development and more to come. That whole area is going to be redeveloped to support transit. So looking forward to that event. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Mental Health Awareness Month aims to raise awareness about mental health, reduce stigma, and encourage people to seek help when needed. Mental health is an integral part of one's overall health. It impacts how we feel, think, and behave. The workplace can be a source of stress and is essential to address mental health concerns in the workplace. Mental health issues can impact job performance and relationships with colleagues. A workplace that prioritizes mental health and well-being can foster a positive, productive work environment. In May is also Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native Hawaiian Heritage Month. During this month, we recognize the heritage, history, and contributions of Asian and Pacific Islanders, a very diverse community, including all who hail from the Asian continent, Melanesia, and Micronesia. This observance was established during the month of May in recognition of the May 1969 completion of the U.S. Transcontinental Railroad, mostly constructed with the labor of Chinese immigrants, and in recognition of the first arrival of Japanese immigrants to the U.S. in May in 1843. For almost 2 centuries, Asian Pacific Islanders have participated in American history, bringing with them their talent, skills, and hard work, improving and adding to the growth and prosperity of the United States, sometimes enduring prejudice, discrimination, and prosecution along the way. Today, we want to thank everyone for all their contributions to the fabric of our communities in this nation. Finally, I'd like to remind everyone that this is the only board meeting for this month. There will be no board activities on May 25th due to the holiday weekend. This concludes my report. I'll now turn the floor over to our GM, Mr. Clark.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Thank you, board members, for the meeting today. First slide, obviously, it's the theme. Yellow is back. And obviously, we've heard some from public comments, let alone some of our staff. Everyone is really happy to be back on the yellow line. I want to thank the team. I appreciate the board recognizing our great construction and capital team. But I also want to thank, from the event side, the great event that we had last Saturday before we opened. So board member Lowe was in attendance, and board member Spring, I see she's in the audience. She was in attendance too. Board member Aguirre was there as well. So it was really nice and I hope you enjoyed it. We have several hundred people, and it was a really good event. Lots of kids, really trying to see the system in a different way. So thank you for recognizing the staff, and I want to just thank all the staff for all the hard work. On the next slide, actually, if you go back to the slide, this picture I think is actually just amazing. If you look at that, what this tunnel looked like, yeah. Now I will say that tunnel's not going to stay as bright as clean as that. Rail dust gets on everything after a while. It's not unsafe. It's just that's the nature of the environment we're in. But this is a good example of what that capital funding that you all worked so hard for in 2018, what it's delivering. So this, as you know, was part of the water issue that led to the L'Enfant issue, tragic scenario at L'Enfant. And this state of good repair work, in my opinion, we just can't relent on, right? We are going to look after this house forever, and we can't let our system get to that first photo on the left ever again. We got to keep it as close as we can to the right if we want to really run a safe, reliable system. So you all know that, and I think Ms. Rush hit that nail on the head. That these pictures are the example of the challenge ahead, but why ultimately we need to be successful on long-term stable funding. The next picture I want to highlight, Tom's team has pulled some data early. So on Monday, we had 15,000 customers go across the Yellow Line Bridge. Tuesday, we had 18,000 customers go across the Yellow Line Bridge. A lot of people just missed the view of going across that bridge. It is, that alone, it's just really nice. Yellow Line stations were up about 8%. Compared to other parts of the network. So obviously that shows a lot of people back. Now we have a little drop in some of our other blue line stations where there was other service, specifically Arlington National Cemetery. So on the cemetery, unless there's an event kind of going on or high tourism, that is very, there's a lot of seasonality in Arlington National Cemetery. At National Airport, 14% increase at that station this week. So that's probably A, the Yellow Line and so much more service, and then B, there's a lot of commencements going around. I noticed a lot of pictures at the Lincoln Memorial this morning at 7 a.m. with gowns. So more people coming to the district and the region flying in is great, and that means more people getting on our service. So we were with the CEO, Mr. Potter yesterday at MWA, and he was really talking it up. And we're the only region in the country that is served by two rail stations, where two big airports are served by rail stations. So it's a fantastic partnership, and we're going to continue to really try to work with the airport to drive as many people as possible on the rail system. The next slide, and I think this is important. I want to just highlight this part again. You all went through this a lot. We did this 15 times during the budget process, but most people out there, I think, fully understand that. But I really want to highlight this one more time. People on the north end of the Green Line have not lost service. So we do have people to tweet and go, hey, what happened? The Yellow Line didn't come back above Mount Vernon. Well, first of all, the last 8 months, there was no Yellow Line. Number two, the service above Mount Vernon stays the exact same. The other thing I want to clarify is the service we're delivering today is not the exact same service as budget, because we don't have all of our operators and all the trains we need to deliver budgeted service. So I get that it is confusing out there publicly. I'll ask, we'll continue to work with our media partners and others to try to really get this articulated well so we can understand where we are is not where we're going to be. So as we open the Yellow Line, it's Mount Vernon, and we were running Mount Vernon for the rest of the year after we get to full staffing, because that will allow us to run more service to Branch Ave. So then the entire network has a lot more service. So I know you've all heard that a lot of time. I just wanted to use one more chance publicly to explain to people that we are actually not running less service on the Green Line North. And the idea is as we get more service, we're going to continue to increase service. So the next slide, and this is another good news this week, we were able to enhance red line service starting on Monday. We're down to 6-minute frequency during rush hour and peak periods. This is a big deal. The red line, and a member of the media tweeted this out on Monday. The red line has not been at 6-minute frequency in over 1,000 days until Monday. So testament to the hard work of the team getting us back to this service level. Obviously, long term, there's more improvements in the budget, but 6-minute frequency obviously is very good frequency. Another misnomer that again trying to publicly clarify that you all know is the reason the red line gets more service than other lines is because it's a single line and it doesn't have interlining with the other lines. So we'll put out something that the red line gets an increase in service, And everyone will say, well, what about blue, silver, and orange? Well, overwhelmingly amount of stations on blue, silver, and orange are covered by 2, if not 3 stations. So whereas the red line has to have more service because it's the only line. So again, you all know that. I encourage us all to continue to use that language to explain to everyone. Not every single thing is the exact same. Where, you know, an apple and a banana and an orange are not is kind of WMATA. Actually, it's a good colors as well in the WMATA. But the more I think we give that clarity to people is helpful. We have to remember there's a bunch of people that haven't used the system in a couple of years, so they kind of forget these things. And then there's new people that move to DC and the region every day, and those people are not familiar with the system. So the more I think we educate on that, the better. The next thing we want to talk about here is on May 6th, so last week was the first weekend of Embassy Day, we added more service on the N6. N6 goes from Farragut to Van Ness? Friendship, thank you, Friendship. I've been on it and I couldn't remember which part, so thank you, Tom. And we doubled ridership last Saturday by increasing service on the N6. So we're going to actually run more service this weekend as well to support Embassy Day. It's such a big regional important event. I will tell you, I was out around DuPont last weekend. It is packed on Saturday, which is really good to see. You know, a lot of people out, the economy coming back. You'll see DuPont and Van Ness were up 130 and 190% respectively last weekend on the red line as well. So, you know, this is the first time this agency has done a little bit more service to support Embassy Day, and quickly it's paid off because more people are using the service. So run good service, talk about good service, more people use good service. That's what we're going to continue to do. The next slide, Better Best Network, obviously, you know, want to highlight again that the team is really out there working this hard. We've had 50 events in 50 days. Those will wrap up by the end, you know, the next few weeks. You can see the numbers on the side. We're engaging just thousands of people. It's very active. A lot of people are passionate about the bus network. One, what service for them, but B, they see the larger value for the whole region and the community. That's the more input we have, the better the network's going to be. And there's 5 events on the right I want to just highlight. I won't go through them all. Again, encourage the board members to feel free to attend if you have the availability, but certainly pass these dates along to your networks. The more people that are at these events talking with our team, we're going to have the best possible future network. Then the conversation is going to transition to, of course, you know, and Ms. Rush hit this nail on the head as well. How do we fund the enhancements to the network? So it's not just our deficit for next year, it's how do we add more service? Because overwhelmingly, everyone wants more bus service. And the demand shows there's places that we need to deliver a lot more bus service. The last slide I want to highlight is, this is National Police Week, or actually, I think we transition next weekend into National Police Week. So yesterday we did a big event, and I mentioned earlier, annual award ceremony. We had 196 total awardees, including 13 civilians. The top picture is actually about a week ago. We had a promotional ceremony where 9 sergeants, 7 lieutenants, and 1 deputy chief got promoted. You can see the families are at these events. They are very special events. To see a little child pin a badge on an officer is a very emotional event. I'm really proud and thankful of Chief Anzalo. He is a true, really good law enforcement leader. Like I've said before, he doesn't come this with an ego or personal gain. He is really out there every day leading his department and trying to be the best collaborative community policing department we can be. We're going to continue to work on that. A special note I wanted to highlight are two officers that we went, and we'll make sure we send you the book of all the awards. And I think it's pretty emotional to read through it all, of all the, you know, heroic work and quite frankly, putting their own life at risk multiple times to both save people. Officer Bryant was an individual, he's actually on the system all the time, I see him all the time. He saved a 15-year-old's life at Benning Road last December. That individual got shot, 15-year-old you know, young person, tourniquet, and saved that person's life. And that, you know, that's the type of people we have. This picture on the bottom right is Officer Fields. It's got to be almost a police record. She's identified almost 300 people in what we call BOLOs, or be on the lookouts. She's identified over 300 people in the region in her career, and she's been here for 4 years. That's basically what it says. She has photographic memory. She's actually resulted in almost 6 violent offender arrests herself this year. She is nonstop everywhere. When she won her award yesterday, the entire group was clapping for her. Incredibly well liked and well respected, and she's just doing a great job. The other officer, and we're going to have him come in June, is the Officer of the Year, which is Officer Ubera, and he has same scenario. Just so many great situations on helping people, getting violent people arrested off the system in collaboration with our partners. And so I know public safety is a never-ending topic. We obviously talk in Metro, but I want to recognize, I think, the people that are out there 24/7 really doing a good job. We're gonna keep working it nonstop until we just make the system as safe as possible for everyone. So, Chair, that's the report for this month. I'm happy to take any questions or concerns.
Okay. Questions? Suggested revision to the starting the airports. We have 3 world-class airports served by rail, high-quality, frequent rail, BWI being the 3rd.
Very true. Sorry about that, board member. I'll refine. 2 served by Metro and 1 served by our great partner, Mark, and Amtrak.
And one thing that a reporter tweeted out, I think it was last night. I was away. I didn't have access to Wi-Fi at several points yesterday. So it was about 1 year ago today that the announcement was made that we had selected Randy as general manager. So that's almost hard to believe that a year has gone by so quickly with everything we've had to deal with. So I hope we didn't oversell it.
That's funny. I saw that picture last night, and I said to my wife, I said, wow, I used to look young. I very much appreciate the opportunity and really enjoy. And I say this all the time. I am just so proud to be part of this team. The staff this is top of the industry staff here. The people are really, really dedicated to what we do. And I just appreciate being part of it. Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll move on to the report by the Finance and Capital Committee. Mr. Letourneau.
Thank you. I will remind the board that Mr. McAndrew is recused from this item, which is why he's walking away. We have 1 item referred to the board plus that BWI comment. It's kind of being a solid Dulles guy. We have 1 item referred to the board from this morning's Finance and Capital Committee meeting. It is approval of Tacoma Compact Public Hearing Staff Report and amendments to the Mass Transit Plan. Staff sought approval of the Compact Public Hearing Staff Report and amendments to the Mass Transit Plan. The proposed changes to transit facilities at the Tacoma Metro Station. Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion on the table by Mr. Letourneau. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Lowe. Is there any discussion or comment on the item?
Just to echo the comment that you made, Mr. Chairman, I understand some of the concerns that have been expressed by the public, but I think our role is to be a partner with jurisdictions on their land use and development plans. And so I would certainly not want Metro to move forward on anything that was not consistent with what our jurisdictional partners are seeking in these areas. The details on issues like parking availability, and some of the other neighborhood concerns are really best served by those jurisdictions as part of their comprehensive land use process, rezoning applications, of which I'm very familiar. We have lots of those in Loudoun County, where we deal with those things. Metro's role really is just the landowner. So yes, we are obviously approving modifications to the configuration at the stations, but I think it's up to others to deal with and mitigate some of the concerns that are expressed. But I would not want to stand in the way of that development by not moving forward. So,
and these are not just development projects in my view. I mean, they're really more asset allocation projects. So, okay, Ms. Ellison, please administer the vote. Oh, Dr. Lowe, sorry. Yep.
I don't know if staff can answer this question, but on slide 7 of the staff presentation at the Finance Committee about this, the slide said that the project's 30% affordable housing, but verbally, I heard staff 15%. So I think it might just be helpful for the record if we could clarify which it is.
I can clarify, it is 15% with 30 to 60% of MFI. On the website, the materials published on WMATA's board page does have the right slide, but I think our live link that got put up during the presentation showed an older version. So the one that is posted on the website, the PDF version, is correct.
Great. That's what everyone's going to go to. What does the 30 to 60% range, though? Isn't that just pretty much 60? Like, where does 30 come into play here?
Through the PUD process, the rezoning negotiations, the developer has been coordinating with the district on the band of affordability, and that some of the units will be restricted at lower bands.
Incredible.
And so that's why you see that spectrum.
Okay, well, that's great because that's what there's the biggest shortage of. Okay. I thought, like, in the comments that we heard today, there was like one really helpful suggestion, which is basically like this project includes parking, and just like put a sign that's like, you can park here to take them, just make it, just put up. I thought that was a really helpful suggestion. In the staff presentation, you said that we can move forward with this and you guys can like deal with that. So
absolutely.
Go for it.
We've been having conversations with the developer about the public portion of their parking garage. There's the residential portion, then there's the public portion, and wanting to collaborate with them actively on signage and communications to customers that it is available for their use.
Great.
Stephen, yeah, of course. Sarah, just one moment though. Stephen, could you introduce yourself, please, for the record? So,
my name is Stephen Segerlin. I'm a director in the Office of Real Estate Development.
okay. Ms. Klein.
Yeah, just following up on Dr. Lowe's question, the affordable restricted units, how long is that restriction for?
I believe it's for the duration of the lease, which is 99 years.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, sorry.
Just one. Can we get clarity? I do think it's important that we use the right terminology. So we do refer to these spaces as kiss and ride. What is our definition of kiss and ride? Because I understand the point some of the commenters made, which is they look like parking spaces with, meters.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two types of parking facilities at Metro: the kiss and ride facilities, which is an ungated facility, and then park and ride facilities, which are a gated facility. On the station vicinity map for Tacoma, it is labeled as kiss and ride, and there is not a gate upon entry to the parking lot. However, the management of those spaces in terms of the allocation of times that parking is available has varied and does vary across our system, as we are trying to maximize the use of assets and revenue generation from our assets. And so you will see within the kiss and ride facilities across our entire portfolio, there's different durations of time that's allowed for parking. And again, we've been thinking if we have the asset now and it's not being further used, we want to try and think about dynamic ways to generate utilization.
Okay, but so our definition of kiss and ride is simply a facility that's not gated.
Yeah.
And that may be different than what the public understanding is of that terminology. So it's useful to clarify that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none. Ms. Ellison?
Chair Smedberg?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Vice Chair Drummer?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Letourneau?
Aye.
Dr. Lowe?
Aye.
Martin Proctor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on. The next agenda item is consent. We have one consent item before the board for approval today. I'd like to move approval of the following: indemnification of the District of Columbia, approval of a resolution to indemnify the District of Columbia and its agencies in order to use District of Columbia-owned facilities for future and current compact public hearings. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Lowe. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next to the reports of the jurisdictions, NBTC. I don't have anything we had.
Yeah, the only thing is, just for the awareness, MVTC presented the value of Metro report, which we should probably provide to everybody on the board. It's a kind of quantitative analysis of the economic impact of Metro. I think it's useful information. And the board, as I discussed, did also authorize, the commission authorized an additional work related to Metro's fiscal cliff. So that is ongoing. But we'll try to get a copy of that value proposition piece to all the board.
Thank you, Matt. District of Columbia, Deputy Mayor Babers.
I don't have anything. We don't have anything.
Okay. WSTC, Mr. Drummer.
Nothing to report.
Mr. McAndrew.
Just say thank you to WMATA for partnering with us as we work to put the Purple Line back on track. That means altering operations on the Red Line at various stages, and we appreciate the coordination and partnership.
Thank you. And federal government, Ms. Klein.
I just wanted to acknowledge that earlier this week, the Department of Transportation headquarters, which is located at New Jersey Avenue Southwest, was renamed in honor of two former Secretaries of Transportation, William T. Coleman and Norman Y. Mineta. So it's now the William T. Coleman and Norman Y. Mineta Federal Building. Just to acknowledge the work of these two men who really made lasting contributions to the nation's transportation system. That's all from us.
All right, thank you. With no further business to come before the board, we will stand adjourned and will now move to executive session. In accordance with the bylaws, I, Paul Smedberg, request that the Board of Directors convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions, WMATA contracts, or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions or the federal government, and C, personnel or labor issues, including discussions of labor contracts and labor negotiations, consideration or interviews of candidates for employment, and the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, or resignation of individuals, and G, deposition of WMATA property or acquisition of real property for WMATA purposes, where discussion in public would adversely affect WMATA's negotiating or bargaining position. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Lowe. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, and thank you for joining us.